Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is mentored by Kakuzu to become a powerful ninja and bounty hunter. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Out, get out, you damn demon! Uzumaki Naruto ran out the door of the shop, skidding around a corner and barreling into a nearby trash can in his hasty escape. The 5-year-old rubbed his temples to clear the pounding in his head and slowly sat up, looking over his shoulder to see if the shop's proprietor had given chase. When the young boy saw he hadn't, he heaved a sigh of relief and plodded down the alley he found himself in. Lost in thought, he emerged into the daylight of another of Konoha's main shopping streets, and wandered down it in the direction of the orphanage. His stomach let out a growl of protest as he passed a fruit vendor, and he subconsciously moved closer, hoping for something, anything, to abate the gnawing hunger. The vendor noticed his approach and shot him a dark glare that scared Naruto off, and he rejoined his original path, a hungry orphan. His lack of family was perhaps one of the greatest puzzles of Naruto's young life. When he'd gotten old enough to understand the solitude, he'd asked the third Hokage about his parents, but had received no real response, and so had gone to the library and attempted to research his lineage. Of course, he had limited reading skills and the librarian had thrown him out with the warning to never come back again when she discovered him, so he hadn't gotten too far. But it seemed as though there were no records of any Uzumaki except for him in the few books he'd scrounged up. As if that wasn't strange enough, Naruto possessed unruly, spiky blonde hair, as bright and vibrantly colored as the sun, and crystal blue eyes, both extremely rare traits among the citizens of the Hidden Leaf. Some members of the Yamanaka clan possessed traits close to his, but their hair and eyes were much lighter in color than his, and they seemed close-knit enough as a family to not just abandon one of their own, if he was some distant relative. Naruto arrived at the orphanage and snuck in through the same window he'd escaped from, keeping an eye out for any of the matrons. He made it to his room, small and isolated from the other children, and sat on his futon in silence, the scar of being chased out of yet another store still fresh and aching. Reaching for the last of some nuts he kept hidden for emergency purposes, he settled himself back and ruminated on the day's events. That incident was not the first in which he had been chased out of a shop, or even been called a demon for that matter. The majority of the villagers, and even a fair amount of the shinobi, seemed to either outright hate him or, at the very least, act completely indifferent to his existence. This was the second strangest puzzle in the blonde's life. What had he done to deserve such hatred aimed at him? He was only 5 years old, and aside from attempting to nick an apple here or there to prevent himself from going hungry, as the orphanage matrons seemed to be as spiteful towards him as the rest of the populace, he couldn't think of a single thing that would warrant such animosity towards him. Unless… Naruto paused with a handful of nuts partway to his mouth, working through a new thought. What if something his family or clan had done was so bad, so despicably vile, that the villagers were taking their anger and grief out on him? It explained why everyone seemed to hate him, as well as why there was no mention of any Uzumaki in any records he could find. If whatever had happened was that bad, then it probably would have been stricken from the records. It all fit. The 5-year-old scowled at nothing in particular. It was such a stupid reason to hate him and make his life lonely. He couldn't be blamed for whatever his ancestors had done. He was just a child, and yet, it seemed as though the villagers were taking their grief or anger or whatever out on him, if the years of exile and mistreatment were any indication. Naruto stood up abruptly, an idea taking root in his mind. Fine, he decided aloud, I get that I'm not wanted. I'm outta here, everyone here can suck it. Silence greeted this proclamation, but Naruto nodded in assurance of his decision. 15 minutes later found Naruto beginning a trudge along a well-hidden path that led through the forest surrounding Konoha. He had gathered what meager belongings he had, including a small amount of money, and packed them in a shabby-looking backpack that appeared too big for his small frame. He glanced back at his old home one more time. Bye, Konoha. Better hope you never see me again, cause if you do, I'm gonna get you back for what you did to me and my family. With that declaration hanging ominously in the still air, Naruto turned around and didn't look back. Kakuzu jumped from branch to branch, growling at the protection the dense foliage the trees of the Land of Fire provided his latest bounty. He was frustrated that he hadn't caught the little shit yet. Then a kunai with an exploding tag shot at him and promptly exploded. He emerged from the smoke cloud with noticeably darker skin, a sign that he'd activated his Earth Release, Earth Spear technique, and his clothes smoking and somewhat frayed, but otherwise unharmed. Scratch that, he was pissed. The fucker was so dead. It wasn't like the guy he was chasing was even strong, just clever. He was a rogue chunin from Iwagakure, but had Jonin-level abilities in hiding, stealth, and traps. So basically, he was a coward. But he was a damn smart coward if he could keep ahead of Kakuzu, a keen analyst in his own right, for the number of hours the chase had lasted thus far. That was pretty much the only reason Kakuzu was following him, and because the little shit had tried to steal from him. That was just unacceptable. Kakuzu pushed a bit more chakra to his feet and managed to catch sight of his target. Adrenaline shot through his system as the excitement of the capture built, fueled on by the sight of the renegade in front of him. Fortunately, he had a much larger chakra capacity than the Chunin, and as the chase had been going on for a decent amount of time, the other man's stamina was running low. It was time to act. Kakuzu performed 3 hand seals and summoned chakra to his mouth. Katan Zukoku! A condensed fireball shot from his mouth and impacted on a tree branch just behind the Iwanin. The ensuing explosion felled several trees and sent his target flying. Behind his mask, Kakuzu grinned. Naruto didn't know how long he had been walking. The forest surrounding the Hidden Leaf Village seemed virtually endless, and he was willing to wager that he had been wandering around for several hours at least. Then he heard the explosions. His ears perked at the loud noises, and he stopped moving and looked around. His eyes narrowed and he took off running northwest from his current position. Curiosity was a strange thing, Naruto supposed as he ran. Any normal person probably would have run in the opposite direction of whatever made such a huge ruckus. But as a young child, and what was more, a young boy, anything that went boom, or involved fire was automatically classified as cool. He didn't give consideration to the fact that it might be an enemy, or an assassin, or anything. He just had to know who or what was causing the huge explosion. 10 minutes later, he stopped at the edge of a clearing, mouth agape in a mixture of awe and horror. Several trees lay on the ground, smoldering and charred black. Huge chunks of bark were missing from standing and toppled forestry alike, branches broken and splintered, some hanging precariously from their perches. Leaves were scattered about the clearing, most of them burned to a crisp. Naruto stared at the destruction, eyes wide in amazement at who or what could cause such damage to the area. That should be a sufficient lesson on the merits of stealing from your betters. Naruto's head swiveled so fast he thought he heard his neck crack. Standing in front of one of the less damaged trees was a giant of a man, boasting a 6-foot frame to match his deep, guttural voice. A long black cloak hung around his body, falling to the knees of the deep green pants that were frayed at the cuffs, a pair of standard black ninja sandals on his feet. Some sort of tan cloth was covering his head and hair, disappearing into the recesses of his cloak, and a triangular piece of black fabric was sticking up in the front, tied in the back by a strip of cloth. In front of him, the Iwanin had been unfortunate enough to get caught in the blast radius of Kakuzu's searing migraine technique. The explosion had sent him careening bodily into a thick tree trunk, which had splintered from the impact and broken the man's right arm and leg. As he sat on the ground, dazed and confused with blood dribbling from his nose and mouth, Kakuzu had appeared and proceeded to slowly approach him, a maniacal grin hidden by the black cloth covering his mouth and nose. The next 10 minutes had been particularly appeasing to Kakuzu's sadistic nature before the bounty hunter decided to end it. Naruto gasped as the tall man's hand seemed to emerge from the other ninja's chest, a large mass of black something attached to the hand, which disappeared into the sleeve of his cloak. The blonde thought he saw the giant's head twitch slightly in his direction, and so he quickly ducked behind a tree trunk to hide his presence. Taking several deep breaths, he heaved a silent sigh of relief when nothing immediately happened to him. He peeked around the edge of the tree, but only the dead body of the other ninja was there. What? Where'd he go? Humph. I thought I sensed someone arriving. Just some damn brat, though. Naruto saw red. He had had enough of being looked down upon. Who are you calling a brat? He shouted as he turned around and threw a punch that would merely hit the tall man's leg. In retrospect, Naruto would look back on that moment and realize that it was simply stupid to attack this man. He was clearly a ninja, and a powerful one at that, and Naruto had yet to even start attending the ninja academy back in Konoha. And even disregarding that, there was the fact that this man had already killed someone else, a fully grown man, and Naruto was only half his size, if that. So it wasn't altogether surprising that the ninja managed to simply sidestep his basic attack, but then his foot met Naruto's stomach and the boy slammed into a tree 50 feet away, blood spurting from his mouth. Normally, I would hardly bother wasting my time with a brat like you, mocked the ninja, taking slow steps forward and stopping a good 30 feet from Naruto's position on the ground. But I have had a particularly trying day, and that last kill, while satisfying, was not nearly as fulfilling as I thought it would be. My name is Kakuzu, brat. Remember it, so you can tell the devil that it was I who sent you to hell. Naruto could only stare in horror and fright as the man, Kakuzu, performed a series of hand seals and brought his right hand to his mouth, forming a ring with the thumb and index finger. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. A giant ball of fire raced towards him and engulfed him, and then he thought no more. Kakuzu watched as his technique swallowed the young boy and waited until the fire died out, leaving the boy's body scorched and smoking. I suppose I should try for something a bit more challenging next time. The bounty hunter turned around and walked towards the body of the Iwa, looting the corpse for anything of value. He found a small bag of money, not even worth the time to kill him, some exploding tags, worthless, as well as a couple of kunai, some shuriken, and a spool of wire, substandard quality, all of which he dropped on the ground. The only other thing of interest Kakuzu found was an empty sealing scroll which he promptly used to seal the body of the missing nin in. While he normally preferred to carry the bodies of his bounties for personal satisfaction, the Iwa nin was unlikely to be worth much, and he'd already wasted enough time chasing him down. He wouldn't waste more dragging the corpse around on his back. He was about to leave when a wave of chakra, fouler than anything he'd sensed before, washed over the area, stopping him in his tracks. He turned back and watched as a strange, malicious, red chakra covered the blond boy in a vulpine-like shroud. His eyes narrowed slightly as the chakra boiled and hissed over the boy's wounds, slowly healing them and making the burns caused by his attack to disappear. How interesting, Kakuzu muttered. He grabbed one of the Iwa nin's kunai and approached the blonde, who had started to moan and stir. When he was standing in front of the boy, he used the black threads in his body to detach his right hand and slide the kunai down the length of the blonde's arm, watching up close in morbid fascination as the red chakra hissed over the wound and healed it, not even leaving a scar. Naruto wasn't entirely sure what was happening. He remembered being hit by Kakuzu's attack, and then pain. Lots of pain. He moaned as his body spasmed briefly, a prickly feeling like ants on skin running through his veins. It took a minute for the feeling to fade, and then he heard footsteps approaching. Please don't be Kakuzu. Please don't be Kakuzu. He stayed perfectly still, trying to play possum and praying that Kakuzu would think he was dead. Then there was a stinging feeling as a sharp object, a kunai, Naruto guessed, was dragged down his arm. He hissed slightly at the pain, but otherwise tried to remain as silent as possible. He heard nothing for a moment, and almost heaved a sigh of relief. Boy. Naruto flinched, recognizing the deep voice as Kakuzu's. He continued trying to fake death, even though he knew it was pointless. I know you are alive, boy. Open your eyes and look at me, or I will make sure you die for real this time. Deciding that it was better to obey than face the consequences, Naruto gave in and opened his blue eyes. Kakuzu was standing above him, an imposing, towering figure. A black cloth concealed most of his facial features with the exception of his strange eyes, pupilless green orbs set in red sclera, and the weird black triangle thing the blonde had noticed earlier was attached to a hydrate that held the crude symbol of a waterfall with a slashed line through it, a sign that Kakuzu was a missing nin from Takigakure, the village hidden in waterfalls, not that Naruto could identify that. Hard green eyes stared down at Naruto, and the blonde had the strangest feeling that those eyes were penetrating his very being. Where are you from, boy? Around Naruto hedged, hoping that Kakuzu didn't kill him. He'd rather not tell this stranger he was from Konoha, though he couldn't explain why. Apparently, Kakuzu didn't care enough to pursue that avenue. Do you have a Kekkei Genkai? A what? Kakuzu sighed and fought down the urge to kill the brat. A Kekkei Genkai, he repeated, a special trait that runs through your family and is unique to it. Naruto blinked. Oh. I dunno. I'm an orphan. I don't know my family. Interesting, the other man mused. Kakuzu was silent for several moments, during which Naruto found the courage to speak up. Why? Naruto watched as Kakuzu seemed to debate with himself momentarily, or so it appeared. With most Kakuzu's face covered, it was hard to tell. Finally, he said, you seem to have some sort of healing ability that allows you to recover from injuries which should be fatal. Such an attack would have killed ninjas several times your age and possessed of talents far beyond what you have, which seems to be next to nothing, and yet you somehow survived it at point-blank range. Further, you do not have even a scratch to show that you were attacked in the first place. It is an anomaly. Naruto remained silent as he absorbed this information. So, he had some special ability that allowed him to heal from anything? That was pretty cool. Boy. Naruto focused his attention back on Kakuzu, who was still standing ramrod straight in front of him, body language stoic. In all my years, I have never extended such an offer before, but your ability to heal and withstand my attack is an intriguing one. Should you choose, you can come with me, and I will teach you how to properly harness this power. The blond boy stared at Kakuzu. Here was a stranger, who had tried to kill him no less, offering him companionship and guidance, two of the very things he had always desired and been denied back in Konoha. And maybe Kakuzu would be able to help him uncover his family history and answer the questions he couldn't get answers for in the Hidden Leaf. Hurry up and make a decision, brat. I am not a patient person by any stretch of the imagination. Time is money, and I do not waste money. If you cannot decide, I can always garner a greater understanding of your ability by other methods. Naruto gulped at the unvoiced threat and bobbed his head quickly in agreement. Kakuzu was terrifying, but the blonde felt he was better off playing along with the man rather than opposing him. Okay, I'll go with you. Kakuzu smirked beneath his mask. A wise decision. Now he trailed off. Naruto watched as Kakuzu seemed to stiffen, a statue in the destroyed clearing. Just when he was about to say something, Kakuzu moved. You are under my care now, brat, so you will do as I say, understood? When Naruto nodded hastily, Kakuzu continued, hide behind these trees and do not move, no matter what you may see or hear. Stay there until I tell you otherwise. This should not take long. The bounty hunter watched as the blonde did as he was told before jumping into the trees and moving quickly to the southeast. Within a minute, Kakuzu was stopped by the approach of 3 chakra signatures. 3 ninja, all wearing the masks and attire of Konoha ANBU, stood on tree limbs in front of him as he jumped to the ground, searching for better leverage. The former Takinin didn't know if they were there because of the explosions from his searing migraine attack or for the blonde boy who he suspected was from Konoha, but it was better to be prepared for either scenario. Stop, began the leader, what is your business within the land of fire? That is none of your concern, Kakuzu replied. Now move along. The 3 ANBU bristled. You have no authority here, warned the leader. Answer the question. I do not answer to you. Prepare to, NGH. Wincing, Kakuzu managed to glance down at the 2 feet of steel protruding from his chest before he fell prostrate upon the forest floor, the katana sliding cleanly from his body. An ANBU in a tiger mask stood behind him, the sword covered in a fiery aura, a sign that fire chakra was being channeled into it. The leader nodded. Good work. Now fan out and find the child. I suspect he's nearby. Not so fast, all 4 ANBU blanched as Kakuzu's corpse began to rise from the ground. It released a throaty sound which they assumed passed for a chuckle before saying, It has been some time since someone has taken my life. You seem to have a fire affinity, though I can replace my destroyed heart with yours. Defensive maneuvers, barked the ANBU leader. We don't know what he's capable of, but if he can survive a killing strike, we need to be cautious. A smart move, Kakuzu commented as the other 3 ninjas split up, but not good enough. Then he disappeared and reappeared behind the leader in a body flicker, plowing a fist hardened by the earth spear technique through the leaf nin's chest. Blood gushed from the wound in the dead ninja's mouth before Kakuzu allowed the body to drop to the forest floor. He observed idly, it will take far too long to hunt down each of these remaining rats. I better get serious. Kakuzu threw off his cloak, revealing a torso and arms riddled with sutures that stretched over his shoulders and down his back. Said back sported 4 animal masks stolen from ANBU he killed in the past, one of which was broken. Then the Takinin's muscles bulged, and the masks popped off his back, black threads stitching closed the open wounds. 3 of the masks took on monstrous, animalistic forms, using the black tendrils that thrived in Kakuzu's body as a basis for their own form. The 4th mask collapsed to the ground in a puddle of black goo. The 3 masks took off in one direction, while Kakuzu headed in the opposite one. 10 minutes later, Kakuzu had cornered the ANBU with the fire chakra and had handily beaten him with water elemental attacks. The other 3 masks suddenly appeared and buried themselves seamlessly into Kakuzu's back, taking their rightful places as stationary objects once again. Kakuzu turned back to his prey. Your teammates are dead, and you are about to join them. Do you have any last words? What are you? I am a bounty hunter long thought dead. My name is Kakuzu, remember it, for it will be the last name you ever hear. Now die. With that, black tendrils slithered out from the stitch in Kakuzu's forearm and dug into the leaf shinobi's chest. The ANBU agent gagged as his heart was forcefully pulled from its cavity, pulsating within the mass of threads that held it. Kakuzu waited until the organ had been assimilated into his body before taking off the ANBU's mask, revealing glassy, blood-red eyes with 3 tomo in each one. An Uchiha, no wonder he seemed so skilled, and it also explains the high katana affinity. Pity he might have fetched a high price one day. Kakuzu let the black threads maneuver the mask to his back where it was sewn on to cover his newly captured heart. I am full once again. Now back to the brat. Naruto waited for what felt like forever, though it had actually only about 15 minutes. When he heard Kakuzu calling, "Come out now, brat," he appeared from his hiding spot, taking in the slight puncture in Kakuzu's cloak. Are you okay? He asked, unsure if his concern was warranted. A minor wound, you will discover in time. Come, you have much to learn. The bounty hunter gestured for Naruto to climb onto his back, and the blonde did so silently. So, brat, what is your name? Naruto twitched. He didn't like being called a brat. Uzumaki Naruto. Very well, Naruto. First of all, do not get used to this. This is simply the most prudent method to escape the premises, as you do not have the training to do so. That shall be rectified very soon. Second, you will call me Kakuzu and nothing else, or I will kill you for your impudence. Honorifics are old-fashioned and meant to garner respect by those of higher standing within the hidden villages, to which we do not belong. Should you choose to test me, I will have to come up with a more inventive way of instilling respect in you. Lastly, your training begins now. Kakuzu jumped to the nearest tree branch, taking to the canopy to better hide his trail. Then began the lecture. The most important rule you will ever learn is this: money is everything. The world revolves around money, even hell runs on money. Naruto listened to everything with rapt attention, taking in as much as he could. It was the beginning of a new life. Naruto concluded rather quickly that Kakuzu liked money. Brat, did you hear what I just told you? Naruto sighed from his position on Kakuzu's back. Yeah. Then what did I say? You were saying how any ninja that's worth more than 15 million ryo is a good bounty and worth hunting. Good. Maybe like was an understatement. Kakuzu was obsessed with money. That wasn't to say the bounty hunter wasn't upholding his part of the agreement. Throughout the entire journey, which was sped up thanks to the tall shinobi's efforts, Kakuzu had continued to lecture and tutor Naruto on the basics of the ninja world, including countries, hidden villages, kages, the rulers of the larger hidden villages, and anything else of importance he could think of. Suddenly, Kakuzu came to abrupt halt, throwing Naruto violently against his back with the sudden change in momentum. Kakuzu, why are we stoppin'? The older ninja's head turned slightly in indication of the question. We are on the outskirts of a small town within the Land of Fire, close to the border of the Land of Grass. I believe we are far enough away from any major village that we are safe from scrutiny, and so this town will be our temporary base of operations while you gain the skills necessary to become competent. Naruto nodded in understanding. So where are we? If memory serves, the town is called Onanji. It is relatively unknown, and therefore quite self-sufficient. I am sure we will find everything we need here. He paused and then growled, now get off, and Naruto immediately relaxed his grip, sliding off the giant's back. The two walked side by side until they reached the small village, entering it silently and veering to the right as Kakuzu spied an empty field of short grass nearby. He walked to the center of it, and turned around, gesturing for Naruto to stand about 10 feet away from him. The blonde shifted restlessly from foot to foot as Kakuzu stared at him, silently weighing his options. At length, the bounty hunter spoke, his tone low and commanding. I am going to begin teaching you how to be a shinobi. Since you apparently have no training, it seems I will have to explain everything to you from the beginning despite how irritating that is. Watch and listen. In order to effectively become a shinobi, you must learn how to access and utilize chakra. When Naruto opened his mouth to speak, Kakuzu shot him a glare that silenced him instantly. I will get there, brat. Chakra is a combination of energy from your body cells and the mental and spiritual energy gained from physical exertion. You will first need to practice accessing your chakra in order to use it for jutsu. I will teach you that shortly. Now, ninja techniques can be broken down into 3 categories: ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. Ninjutsu is the broadest category, incorporating the hundreds or even thousands of special techniques that ninja use in battle. You have experienced ninjutsu firsthand already. Naruto shuddered at the memory of the searing heat from Kakuzu's fireball, but otherwise remained silent and still. Taijutsu encompasses the realm of physical attacks. Genjutsu involves the use of illusions to confuse and disorient the enemy. Do you understand so far? Naruto nodded slowly. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, ninja techniques, physical attacks, illusions. Got it. Kakuzu's green eyes narrowed, focusing intently upon the young boy. You are very fortunate that you met me, brat. I have one of the most extensive arsenals of ninjutsu you will ever come across in your lifetime. The basics of ninjutsu are as such. There are 5 main categories: Katon, Suiton, Futon, Raiton, and Doton: fire, water, wind, lightning, and earth elements. Each one is strong and weak against another. Water beats fire, fire beats wind, wind beats lightning, lightning beats earth, and earth beats water. Additionally, every ninja has a specific chakra alignment that places emphasis on which element he or she is strongest in and therefore more adept at learning and using efficiently. Now I will show you how to channel chakra, simply to make you are aware of it. Put your hands in this position, continued Kakuzu as he performed the motion, positioning his left index and middle fingers upright and curling his right hand under the left, leaving the right index finger standing. This is the Ram seal, one of 12 different hand signs used to activate jutsu. The Ram also helps to increase concentration and allows for easier access to your chakra. Kakuzu waited as Naruto fumbled with the hand seal, clumsily putting his hands together in a decent replica of his own positioning. Now, focus within and try to bring your chakra to the surface. Naruto closed his eyes and tried to feel for something, anything, within himself. After about a minute, he opened his eyes to see his teacher watching him intently. Considering that you have had no formal training in controlling or even using your chakra, I cannot say I am surprised at this attempt, Kakuzu mused. Keep trying, I will return. The bounty hunter then left, walking towards the main thoroughfare of Onanji. He glanced around at the shops as he went, noting with his keen memory where all the places of interest, few as they were for future use. Stopping suddenly in front of a store, Kakuzu gazed at the sign with curiosity before pushing open the doors and heading inside. The proprietor, an average-sized man in his mid-30s, looked up from the counter, instinctively taking a slight step backwards at Kakuzu's imposing presence. How can I help you today? He stammered. Do you sell shinobi supplies? As some. Anything in particular? Kakuzu merely smirked behind his mask. 10 minutes later, he exited the shop, a handful of supplies for his new charge buried within the folds of his cloak. He snorted to himself. One brat with interesting abilities, and I find myself pandering to his needs and spoiling the little shit. How far the mighty have fallen. The bounty hunter wandered down the road again, taking a branch that led to one of the outlying farms when it appeared. A simple house appeared shortly thereafter, and he approached the dwelling, rapping sharply on the door. He heard shuffling from inside and waited momentarily for the door to swing open, revealing a tall man, though not Kakuzu's height, with short-cropped brown hair and intelligent green eyes. Yes? He asked, looking Kakuzu up and down. Your name is Ryo, correct? Ryo blinked, caught off guard. That's correct. I don't believe we've met before. How do you know me? And who might you be? That is not your concern, Kakuzu stated dismissively. You teach some of the local children, if what I have been told is accurate. Even if that was true, I don't associate myself with people whom I've just met, or don't trust. You seem to fall into both categories. Good day to you. He stepped back and began to close the door, but Kakuzu's hand shot out and grabbed the man's collar before it could shut, yanking Ryo up to his face. Listen here, Ryo, Kakuzu sneered, I do not have a lot of patience, so I will explain this to you in the simplest terms possible. I have taken an intriguing student under my wing to teach the ninja arts to. However, he is quite young and will require tutelage in the more mundane aspects of learning as well. Therefore, it will be your job to teach him what he needs to know with regards to reading, writing, arithmetic, and whatever else you can think of, while I handle the rest of his training. In return, Kakuzu paused and pretended to think, allowing the ominous silence to build tension. In return, I will guarantee the lives of you and your pathetic family, as well as everyone else in this village. I am reasonably sure this place would not be sorely missed if it mysteriously vanished from what few maps it does happen to be on. So do we have an accord? It was a slight gamble to threaten the teacher, since he could easily request aid from the Hidden Leaf, but Kakuzu was confident that he could dispatch anyone who did come if such a scenario came to pass. Plus, fear was a powerful motivator, and the fact that he wasn't requesting anything more complex than taking on another pupil would hopefully detract from the instinct to call for help. Ryo stared at the ninja, his feet barely touching the ground, quaking as Kakuzu delivered his proposition. He gulped. Kakuzu noted the gesture, taking great satisfaction in it. When do I start? He asked meekly. Excellent, I appreciate initiative. Come by tomorrow at noon, to the field at the entrance of the town. If you are not on time, then I will be forced to hunt you down, and I guarantee that you will not enjoy that. Good day, he finished, echoing Ryo's earlier dismissal with a healthy amount of derision. Kakuzu spent the next several hours wandering around the town, mapping out Onanji's landscape. He hadn't survived as a ninja for over 80 years by slacking off and making stupid mistakes. The only reason he had felt secure in leaving Naruto alone was because they were far enough away from any major village, primarily Konoha, that it would take some time for any search party to reach them, if any were in fact searching. He cut a wide swath through the streets, his height and obscured features screaming to the civilians that he was not to be trifled with. Onanji had little to offer as a threat, especially to a ninja of his caliber, but so long as he didn't antagonize the townsfolk, any more than he already had, he felt it was unlikely that they would do more than whisper about his presence. The town possessed a slew of different craftsmen, making up for a lack of quantity with an increase in quality, ranging from tanners to blacksmiths to tailors. Farms surrounded it, raising a variety of products and allowing for it to be, as Kakuzu had told Naruto earlier, almost completely self-sufficient, if slightly backwards, in his opinion. When the bounty hunter decided to return to the field he had left his new protege at, he fully expected Naruto to be passed out, unconscious from chakra exhaustion. He arrived just in time to see Naruto flop to the ground, sweat dripping from his face and breath coming in heavy pants, but still conscious. One eyebrow rose in surprise at Naruto's stamina, but he merely approached the boy and unloaded the bundle of camping equipment he'd picked up on his voyage through the town and been carrying around for a while. "Get up, brat," he ordered. "I'm not a brat," Naruto sulked, climbing shakily to his feet. Kakuzu chose to ignore him. "Can you sense your chakra?" Naruto's head bobbed, a pleased expression on his face. "Very well, show me." The blond boy shifted his legs so they were firmly planted on the ground and brought his hands together into the ram seal, closing his eyes. Several seconds passed before blue chakra swirled around him, weak but nonetheless visible. Kakuzu blinked in surprise. So, he managed to get it after only a couple of hours. Impressive for a brat. "Alright, that is enough." Naruto dropped his hands and opened his eyes, the blue energy dissipating as he straightened and looked at his teacher. "Do you remember what I told you earlier about elemental ninjutsu?" Naruto bobbed his head again, and Kakuzu was half tempted to slap him upside it just so he would stop that ridiculous motion. He reined in his rather hair-trigger temper as Naruto recited, "Water beats fire, which beats wind, which beats lightning, which beats earth, which beats water, right?" "Correct. You will recall that I told you every ninja has a specific chakra alignment with one, or on rare occasions, more than one, of these elements." Here, Kakuzu reached inside his cloak and pulled out 2 square sheets of paper. "This is chakra paper," he explained, "created from trees that are specifically grown with chakra within the land of fire. It is the easiest way to determine which element you have an affinity for." Kakuzu moved one of the sheets to his left hand and focused chakra to his right. The paper there immediately became waterlogged. "My main chakra nature is Suetun, though I possess the capacity to use every element. Now take this," and here Kakuzu held out the paper in his left hand, "and channel your chakra into it." Naruto reached out rather hesitantly and took the paper, staring at it momentarily before closing his eyes and focusing on the feeling he'd spent the last several hours discovering. He heard Kakuzu HM in what he could only guess to be interest before opening his eyes. The chakra paper in his hand had split down the middle, right where he had grasped it with his thumb and forefinger. He looked straight up into Kakuzu's strange green eyes. "What's this mean?" he asked, holding up the paper. "You have a strong futon affinity." "Is that bad?" Naruto hazarded. Kakuzu waved his hand in dismissal and Naruto could have sworn he heard the tall ninja snort. "There is no bad element. It is curious, though wind affinities are quite rare in the land of fire. However, it is a very versatile element, primarily known for its ability to cut." At Naruto's lost expression, Kakuzu sighed. "The wind element is sharper than any blade, able to cut through virtually any object with relative ease. I will train you to hone that ability in time. However, you have done enough for today. We will get something to eat, and then get some rest. There is much to be done tomorrow, and time is money," finished Naruto before Kakuzu could. Kakuzu blinked once more in surprise before smirking beneath his mask. "Clever brat. You and I will get along just fine." Kakuzu woke later than normal, taking advantage of Onanji's anonymity to be a bit more relaxed than he might normally be. He sat up, head scratching the top of the tent he had bought the previous day, and watched Naruto sleep as cluttered thoughts roamed his mind. The boy was talented, Kakuzu would grant him that. He seemed to have an unusually large amount of stamina, which for ninja translated to a larger chakra capacity, always a good thing. Although his grasp of language was a bit lagging, and Kakuzu assumed therefore that his reading and writing talents were also behind, Ryo would be around to fix that. Such basics were more important than any of the ninja arts Kakuzu could teach him at this point, serving as the foundation of his education. Ryo wasn't necessary. After all, Kakuzu could read and write and execute other simple educational exercises. But with the teacher taking Naruto under his wing, Kakuzu was free to bounty hunt and keep his coffers flowing while Naruto learned. Plus, Kakuzu was sure that he would end up killing the kid if he was forced to remain trapped in one place training him. He'd lived by himself for far too long to so quickly adjust to a life of caring for another human being. Besides, as it stood, the blonde was simply going to be an asset to his operation. His intention was to raise the boy to become a competent shinobi and then release him upon the world, taking a percentage of his future income to offset the cost of training him. It was a long-term investment, in no small part because the bounty hunter didn't have experience in teaching, and because his own growth was based on rigorous self-improvement. Naruto would find a reason to grow strong or he would perish. The sink or swim methodology worked for him, so there was no reason it wouldn't work for the blonde. His pupil rolled over and mumbled slightly in his sleep, bringing Kakuzu back to his original train of thought. The brat seemed to have an impressive healing ability that he hadn't known of before, and more importantly, that Kakuzu, with his decades of experience, had been ignorant of. He assumed that its hidden nature was because no one else had tried to kill Naruto previously, and so the ability had remained dormant until it was needed, It wouldn't be the first time such a requirement was needed for the activation of a Kekkei Genkai, though it didn't explain why the former Takinin had never heard of it beforehand. Still, the chakra that such a bloodline limit required had to be massive, which would explain the boy's larger-than-average capacity, especially for an untrained 5-year-old. There was also the way it felt, though evil, tainted. That chakra was more than just mere killing intent. Killing intent was based off of emotion either inadvertently leaked or intentionally used for intimidation purposes, and was typically dependent upon age and experience. But Naruto was too young to know that, nor did he really possess the capacity to utilize it, which meant that the nature of the chakra itself was evil. There were also those strange whisker-like markings on Naruto's cheeks, though that could simply be a physical manifestation of some family trait, similar to Konoha's Inuzuka clan. Still, Kakuzu wouldn't write off any potential explanations until he could definitely rule them out. He couldn't tell for sure what was different about Naruto, but there was something different. Until that time. Get up, brat, time to start training. Naruto groaned but woke up nonetheless, groggily following Kakuzu outside the tent. What followed was Naruto's first of many rather brutal training sessions to prepare him physically for the life of a shinobi. Several hours later, Kakuzu made out the figure of Ryo approaching their training spot. The teacher carried a scroll under one arm and a backpack over the opposite shoulder. He stopped in front of the taller man, watching as Naruto finished a series of stretches and calisthenics that the bounty hunter had shown him. Kakuzu cleared his throat and Naruto looked up, face morphing into a confused expression as his gaze settled on Ryo. Naruto, Kakuzu stated, voice brusque and businesslike, this is Ryo. I have asked him to teach you how to read and write properly, as well as to make sure you learn math and whatever else he considers pertinent. You will show him respect while he is here, and you will pay close attention to what he has to teach you. While not directly related to being a shinobi, these subjects will affect your life and sharpen your mind. A good mind is a valuable tool. Finish up here while I have a word with your teacher. Kakuzu beckoned Ryo to follow him out of earshot. Once they were a safe distance away, he leaned down into Ryo's face and stared intently at the man, an intimidation tactic he'd learned worked wonderfully on civilians due to his unusual eyes. I will be leaving on and off for missions during our stay here. While I am gone, I expect that you will house and guard Naruto with your life. Am I understood? When Ryo nodded, Kakuzu dismissed him with a wave of his hand. Good. Now your pupil is waiting. I have some business to take care of, but I will most likely be back tonight. He is under your jurisdiction until then. Then Kakuzu strode off, leaving a visibly shaken Ryo to walk over to Naruto and introduce himself. Spreading out the scroll he had with him, he began to tutor his newest student. A year passed without incident. Just as he'd said, Kakuzu disappeared rather frequently to hunt rogue ninja, partially for the money and partially to vent his frustration that it appeared he was getting soft. He would remind himself that the time, effort, and frustration was all for an ultimate purpose that would benefit him down the line, but it didn't change the fact that mentoring such a young, impressionable child was something he never even considered putting on his bucket list, especially since some of his expeditions were really just outings to make sure there were no shinobi targeting his young pupil. During these trips, Naruto would stay with Ryo, who despite his fear of Kakuzu, learned to like and enjoy Naruto's company. The boy listened to anything he taught with rapt attention, hanging off of every word. In addition to his daily workouts, which consisted mainly of running, stretching, and shadow fighting, Naruto was often tested by Kakuzu and Ryo on random subjects pertaining to anything and everything. Kakuzu realized rather quickly that Naruto was able to grasp general concepts pretty swiftly for someone his age, despite his previous learning handicap. And while Naruto would never be as smart as Kakuzu himself, the blonde was clever and cunning, able to pick out flaws and strategies and set up traps on a level that surprised the bounty hunter. With the right training and teachers, it looked as though Naruto could have been, or still could be, the prodigy of whatever clan or family he belonged to. The bounty hunter heavily suspected that part of Naruto's drive to learn came from a desire to try to impress him. Throughout their interactions, Kakuzu always remained aloof of any attachment for his pupil, and so he looked to the bounty hunter for approval. It was an awkward notion, probably because the former Takinin knew that it was how he had grown up, and the idea of an emotional connection with the blonde was distasteful, but he had to admit that it was an effective stratagem. Naruto was a tool, a means to an end, and despite his apparent potential, he had a long way to go before he became truly useful to Kakuzu. Perhaps it is time to start teaching him the basics of ninjutsu. It will take some time for him to master the art. I suppose I should start when I return to the village. Kakuzu was currently headed out on another hunt, traversing the border between the lands of grass and rain to head to the southern part of the land of earth. Rumors of a skilled missing nin from Kusugakure, the village hidden in grass, had started floating around, and Kakuzu wanted to cash in on the new high bounty before someone else did. Oh, he seems to be on a mission. Do you think it's okay to distract him for a few moments? The tall ninja paused in his trek as something green melded from the ground not 20 feet in front of him. The green thing opened to reveal a man with short green hair and yellow eyes, body chromatically split in two, right side solid black, left side snowy white, and engulfed by what appeared to be a large Venus flytrap. Wrapped around his body was a full black cloak, much like his own, Kakuzu noted, decorated with red clouds. Kakuzu prepared himself for anything, unsure of how to react to this strange appearance by someone he didn't recognize from a bingo book. He would be hard-pressed to admit it, but anyone who could sneak up on him so unexpectedly, heedless of the fact that Kakuzu wasn't a censor type, was someone to be wary of. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What do you want?" "We are Zetsu," spoke a darker voice than the first, and Kakuzu blinked as he postulated that the different colors of Zetsu were probably separate personalities, "and we are here to make you an offer." He peered intently at the person calling themselves Zetsu. What technique was that? Your approach was undetectable. Even Mogirigaku no Jutsu is incapable of doing that. "That was my, shut up, fool," hissed the black side. Leader-sama said to tell him what he needs to know, not every detail. He does not need to know what our abilities are. Kakuzu stared, the mere act of watching two halves of the same person argue with himself allowing him to drop his guards slightly. It also did not appear as if this ninja was looking to fight him. He cleared his throat. "You mentioned an offer. I will hear you out." "Thanks, Kakuzu-san," chirped the white half. "Have you heard of a group known as Akatsuki?" "No." "A shame then, but to be expected." Kakuzu's eyes narrowed. That almost sounded like an insult, and he had a relatively low tolerance for people who pissed him off. Especially ones who had the capacity to sneak up on him. "What is Akatsuki?" "We are a group of S-class missing nin, much like you, working towards a united goal of world domination," Zetsu explained. The bounty hunter quirked an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you plan on accomplishing that?" "Have you heard of the Biju or the term Jinchuriki?" "I have heard stories of the Biju, chakra monsters of enormous power, and of Jinchuriki, human hosts with these creatures sealed inside of them, but my knowledge of them is limited beyond the fact that they supposedly exist. I admit that I do not find it overly pertinent to trifle with such matters myself." Kakuzu had a tendency to ignore the outside world when the people in it weren't mentioned in his bingo book, and the political implications of learning about Jinchuriki didn't appeal to him. He'd had enough of the double talk that pervaded most of the governments of the hidden villages to last a lifetime. He thought he heard Zetsu's black side scoff. Wanting to show him up, he continued, "However, I have heard that my home village has a Jinchuriki within its possession, though I have not yet taken the time to confirm the veracity of this information." "Interesting," Zetsu mused. "We have not heard of Takigaker's creation of a Jinchuriki. That will need to be looked into. However, the other rumors you have heard are accurate. There are 9 Biju ranging from the Ichibi to the Kyubi, most of which are sealed into humans known as Jinchuriki. These humans are generally granted some form of power from their demon, have the capability to access the Biju's chakra, and can normally be identified by some physical trait of their Biju. It's Akatsuki's desire to capture and seal all the Biju in order to attain our goal. It seems unlikely that you would just choose S-class criminals at random to join your organization. What part would I play in this?" "He is much smarter than I gave him credit for," commented the black half to the white half. "Yes, very," the white side responded. To Kakuzu, he said, "Akatsuki requires a lot of funds in order to run properly. Since you're a bounty hunter, you would be really good at helping us out, plus any contacts you've gathered over the years. Also, whispers of your power abound if you know where to listen. Your ability to use multiple elements in conjunction with your analytical prowess would be a great asset in the capture of the Biju and success for Akatsuki's goal." It appeared to Kakuzu that Zetsu was done talking, and so the two stared at each, Kakuzu's gaze glassy as he thought over the proposition. Akatsuki's information network was interesting, to say the least. With how long it had been since his defection from the hidden waterfall, and his own covert activities, few people even knew he was still alive, so the fact that Zetsu had managed to discover his existence was impressive. His lack of knowledge with respect to Takigaker's Jinchuriki was a little surprising, especially since that seemed to be Akatsuki's target. But Kakuzu's former home was notorious for trying to hoard power in secret, and as a small nation, it was entirely feasible that it could be overlooked as a target. Disregarding the strange inconsistencies in Akatsuki's intelligence, Kakuzu had to admit that the offer was intriguing, almost tempting. A year ago, he would have had no reason to not accept the offer: world domination, a wide array of powerful allies with a common goal, not to mention the money he could get from the alliance. A vision of Naruto, the blonde-haired brat with strange abilities and great potential, appeared in his mind's eye. He refocused on Zetsu and calmly stated, "Tempting as it is, I will have to decline your offer. While I have no problem attempting to form a mutually beneficial relationship with Akatsuki, I am uninterested in membership at this time. Very well, muttered the black side. We will contact you at a later time to collect any relevant information. Perhaps then you will be interested in our offer. And how will I know who is Akatsuki? Zetsu's black side sneered. Anyone wearing this black cloak with red clouds is a member of Akatsuki, the dawning of a new age, red with blood. It's rather poetic, isn't it? Finished Zetsu's white half with a smile. With that, Zetsu melted back into the ground and Kakuzu was left to continue his journey with a multitude of new thoughts in mind, but one in particular. Biju and Jinchuriki HM? Interesting. Listen, brat, Kakuzu began one day during Naruto's morning exercises. You are old enough now, and Naruto inwardly wondered how many other people considered it old enough to start pulling your own weight. I am going to teach you how to engage in the world's oldest profession. Naruto raised a hand and opened his mouth to ask exactly what that was, but Kakuzu's glare silenced him. Killing. Naruto could tell from the manic glint in his teacher's eyes that he was grinning beneath the mask. He gulped slightly, the prospect of following in Kakuzu's footsteps a somewhat foreboding one. Kakuzu noticed the movement and reined in his bloodlust. Problem, brat? As a ninja, you will have to kill eventually. That goes double for Nuke-nin, who hunt and are hunted alike, and especially for bounty hunters. But Kakuzu, I'm only 8, aren't I a little young to be doing this? Teacher stared at protege momentarily before deigning to respond. Naruto, began Kakuzu, voice deep and throaty. The blonde came to immediate attention, Kakuzu's use of his name a clear indication that this was a serious conversation. I have spent a lifetime engaged in this trade. Thus far, you have been exposed merely to the basics of the shinobi lifestyle. Now it is time to get serious. Your focus will largely be on elemental ninjutsu, and only when I deem you ready will I send you out. Naruto nodded in reluctant acceptance, observing the small twitch of the bridge of Kakuzu's nose that indicated he was smirking. Good. We shall begin with the basics of bounty hunting. The guidelines for hunting other ninja are really quite simple. There are basically no rules for how the deed is done, but you must return the whole body to whatever collection station you go to. Why? Asked Naruto, confusion painted across his face. I mean, can't you just cut off the head and bring that? That should be enough proof that you killed him, right? The bounty hunter nodded in agreement. For any other profession, that would be correct. However, most of the bounties are placed by a missing nin's home village in order to regain any secrets his body may contain. The secrets of Kekkei Genkai and clan techniques are a valuable commodity to most villages, and they require the body intact in order to properly dispose of any secrets it may contain. I think I get it, Naruto said slowly. Like if someone killed you, Taki would want your body whole in order to get that thread thingy back, right? Hey, what is that? And why did you leave anyway? Naruto watched a sliver of emotion pass over the visible features of Kakuzu's face before the bounty hunter turned around, arm extending out briefly before falling back to his side. We are done for now, Kakuzu bit out before stalking off, Naruto's gaze in the direction of the taller ninja's apparent frustration. The bark of the tree that had sustained Kakuzu's wrath was completely splintered. It began to creak before toppling over into its fellows. Naruto gulped. His teacher had done that damage with just his fist, and so fast that it had been all but a blur. He made a mental note to not bring up Kakuzu's past again, lest the tree simply be representative of Kakuzu's temper, and resolved himself to yet another day of solitary training. Naruto woke up early the next day and began his morning exercises, silently wondering where Kakuzu was. His teacher had not returned after leaving the training spot the previous day, and the blonde was silently worried that he pushed the taller man too far. Almost 2 hours later, Naruto paused as a shadow fell over him. He turned around to find Kakuzu standing behind him, looking none the worse for wear, although numerous splotches of blood covered Kakuzu's normally impeccable cloak and several pink spots decorated his white head covering. The blonde knew better than to ask, so he remained silent as the former Takinin stared down at him unflinchingly. Brat, Kakuzu finally greeted, his voice as level as it always seemed to be. What have you accomplished so far? Naruto grinned, the tension from the previous day dissipating. Just my morning exercises so far. You said we'd work on elemental ninjutsu training today, he reminded. Kakuzu grunted noncommittally in response, his gaze seeming dull with disinterest. Now your real training will begin, he said, ignoring the blonde's statement. Older and more experienced shinobi will not be taken down by your pathetic repertoire of techniques. If you recall, you have a futon affinity, meaning that you are more easily able to utilize wind chakra than the other natures, so we shall begin there. Naruto nodded quickly, his face a picture of excitement. Perhaps a demonstration. Kakuzu mentally concentrated on the futon chakra located within one of the masks on his back. He'd spent so many years honing his abilities that he didn't need to switch around his elemental affinities, but the power behind his techniques were always a little stronger when he did. Watch, he commanded. He went through several hand seals before intoning, Futon, Atsugai. A condensed sphere of wind formed in front of his mouth before he released it into the trees, allowing it to expand from its shape and shred everything in its path. The gales were so fierce that Naruto was forced to shield his eyes as they started tearing up. He squinted in the direction of the attack, and after a minute was finally able to lower his arm and gaze upon the destruction in a mixture of awe and fear. Trees were uprooted and torn asunder for up to 100 yards in a wide path about 50 yards across. Naruto gazed at Kakuzu with renewed respect. Are you gonna teach me that? The blonde hyped, slack-jawed. Kakuzu merely surveyed the damage with a neutral expression. Perhaps in the future, when I deem you ready, he answered finally. In the meantime, here, Kakuzu bent down and picked up a single leaf from the ground. Your main focus will be using your chakra to cut this leaf in 2 pieces. Naruto groaned as Kakuzu proceeded to slice the leaf neatly in half while it was held in the palm of his hand. He then gestured to the ground, indicating that Naruto should pick a leaf and begin, before turning around and walking away, leaving the blonde to stare despondently at the object in his hand. Sighing, Naruto covered one hand with the other and began to focus all of his attention on cutting the leaf as his teacher had just done. The bounty hunter observed from afar as Naruto struggled to have the leaf with just his chakra. He could sense the frustration within his apprentice, but instead of approaching and offering pointers, he merely smirked to himself, pleased with the direction the boy was moving towards. Over the course of the next year, Naruto slowly learned how to access and manipulate nature chakra. By about the 8-month mark, he could successfully split the leaf in half with minimal effort, and Kakuzu nodded his head in acknowledgement of this feat. Naruto grinned broadly in accomplishment. From that day forward, Kakuzu had begun to teach him some basic wind release techniques. After Naruto had split the leaf, Kakuzu had explained more thoroughly why he was able to. Wind chakra was quite malleable, capable of being shaped to be as sharp, thin, forceful, or blunt as the wielder desired. By applying his chakra to the leaf, Naruto was teaching himself how to use his elemental chakra alone to cut something. His training was fairly routine, involving calisthenics and perfecting any ninjutsu Kakuzu deemed him ready to learn. For months, the days bled together until one fateful morning, when Kakuzu woke him up and stated, "Come, brat, we are going on a trip." Naruto rose from bed groggily, asking, "Where are we going, Kakuzu-sensei?" Despite the fact that his teacher had specifically told him he only wanted to be called by his name, with no honorifics, Naruto had started slipping in the added tag as a way to test Kakuzu. The bounty hunter wasn't a great mentor, often disappearing for long stretches of time following blithe comments and vague instructions on how to perform some feat of shinobi prowess. Compared to Ryo, who sat with him and helped him through concepts and problems, Kakuzu's teaching abilities were lackluster. He could understand it during the first couple of years. His grounding needed work, and the abilities that he could hone were simple enough to do on his own that Kakuzu's presence wasn't needed, especially since he could always go to Ryo for extra knowledge. Now that he was a little older, with most of his foundation laid and the rest of his ninja career reliant upon a different foundation, Kakuzu's absence was quite noticeable. He'd once asked why the taller shinobi didn't stick around to help him learn the skills he gave the blonde glimpses of, and after a long silence, Kakuzu had answered, because the road to self-satisfaction is far more vindicating than the alternative. Naruto hadn't been satisfied with such a cryptic answer, but calls for his teacher to explain himself hadn't yielded any results, so he'd resorted to other methods, namely, trying to get Kakuzu to actually give him the time of day. The blonde suspected that, despite his appearance, the former Takinin was actually older than he appeared. The way he talked was a bit archaic, and he could recall Kakuzu expressing some disdain for things being old-fashioned, as if he'd lived during those times and moved past them. As a result, his dislike of honorifics probably stemmed from the fact that he didn't like being considered old, so Naruto had started using them as a way to irritate the man. The only downside was that Kakuzu always retaliated, and the bounty hunter didn't believe in restricting punishment. Still somewhat tired, Naruto wasn't able to dodge the fist aimed for his head. "What have I told you about honorifics?" Kakuzu growled. "As for your question, we are heading for the land of lightning. There are rumors of a rogue Kumonin around, and the best way to learn anything is by example. It is time to take you bounty hunting," he finished, and just by his tone of voice, Naruto knew he was smirking. It took 5 days for the duo to reach the border of the land of lightning. Naruto was a bit tired by the end of the journey. Kakuzu had kept them moving at a steady pace with minimal sleep, stating that it was best to get there early so no one else could take the bounty. "Stay watchful and be careful," Kakuzu cautioned his pupil. "This man is a jonin, and you are still learning simple moves." Naruto nodded in understanding. It took the better part of the day before the pair managed to find any sort of clue to the target's location, the embers of a hastily doused campfire. Kakuzu had them follow the trail for several hours before stopping for a short rest. After that, teacher and student began moving again, finding more signs of recent activity along the way, clues that indicated fear was driving the shinobi to be sloppy, according to Kakuzu. Naruto figured that his teacher took some sort of sadistic pleasure in knowing that. They ended up stumbling upon the renegade about mid-morning of the 6th day. He possessed unkempt crimson hair and narrow honey eyes, clothed in the standard jonin outfit of Kyumogakure. He stood up as Kakuzu approached, taking a defensive stance. "Who are you?" he asked. Kakuzu released a mental sigh. Sometimes it got a little tiring being asked that question. It was fine to take credit where it was due, but with his focus shifted in several different directions since becoming Naruto's caretaker, bounty hunting had become more of a method of stress relief than recreational activity, and now he often preferred just fighting to the verbal boasting he had employed in the past. Instead of replying, he went through the appropriate seals and muttered, "Futon, Atsugai." The nuke nin dodged the condensed sphere of wind that was formed, but Kakuzu kept up the assault. He could apparently control whether or not the wind expanded into the torrential gusts Naruto had been witness to after it was launched. The blonde observed the battle from afar, awed by Kakuzu's talent. His teacher stuck with using wind element tactics throughout the battle, for both Naruto's sake and the fact that, as he'd explained during the journey, his opponent had a lightning affinity. Moving in close, he engaged in a short-lived, brutal taijutsu match with the missing nin. Before using a futon technique, Naruto had not yet been taught to slice neatly into the Kumonin's body, which immediately crumpled to the ground. Kakuzu motioned for Naruto to move closer. A bright slash of red stained his dark cloak. "You need to get used to and accept the sight of the dead," he stated dispassionately. Naruto did as he bade and simply stared at the body, waiting for some sort of emotion but feeling nothing. The Kumonin didn't mean anything to him except as a means to make a living, and he realized suddenly that this was Kakuzu's intent all along, to both desensitize him to the death of other ninja and to show him why it was necessary. He admired Kakuzu's handiwork for another minute before looking up at the taller ninja, waiting for further instructions. "Good," Kakuzu said, "now come. We have a long trek ahead of us." Grabbing the dead renegade and slinging him over his back, the former Takinin started to walk, his apprentice following not far behind. 10-year-old Naruto leapt from treetop to treetop in an attempt to catch his quarry. The year following Kakuzu's brutal capture of the former Kumonin, Naruto had been even more devoted to training than he had previously. It had taken a year, mostly because Kakuzu had continued to disappear for long periods of time, and Naruto wasn't supposed to leave without the man's say-so, until the bounty hunter had deemed his pupil ready for his first mission. It had started a week ago, when Kakuzu had walked into the tent and kicked Naruto awake. "It is time," Kakuzu growled. By the time Naruto's eyes were open, the taller man had already departed their living quarters, leaving the blonde to dress quickly and follow his mentor out. "Time for what?" he asked, confused. Kakuzu turned to look at him. "Your initiation," responded the mercenary. "Your skills should be sufficient to hunt a low-level chunin, so we shall test you." He pulled out a photograph and held it up so that Naruto could see it. The man in the photo had short brown hair and luminescent golden irises. A forehead protector emblazoned with the mark of the hidden grass village kept back his longer bangs. "This is Takashi," Kakuzu continued. "He was a contact of mine within Kyuzugakure, but was recently kicked out for siphoning funds from the government. A man after my own hearts." If Naruto didn't know any better, he would have thought Kakuzu regarded the man with some fondness. "His usefulness to me has become non-existent due to this, and your mission is to kill him and bring his body back to me. As he is only a chunin with basic skills, his capture should be easy, but do not be stupid. Here is a scroll for you to bring the body back in," he added, tossing the blonde said object. Naruto caught the scroll, followed by the second one Kakuzu threw immediately after. "What's this one?" "Open it," Kakuzu replied gruffly. Naruto unfurled the scroll and set it on the ground, placing his palm upon it and applying chakra. There was a brief poof, and the blonde waited for the small cloud of smoke to disperse before looking at the contents: a pair of black cargo pants, a long-sleeved charcoal gray shirt, and a dark blue vest with multiple pockets. "For all intents and purposes, you are now a genin," Kakuzu explained. "As such, you will wear appropriate shinobi attire and carry equipment with you at all times." When Naruto looked up with the beginning of tears in his eyes, Kakuzu turned away. "Get rid of those tears, brat. I did it for my reputation as well as yours, not because I care. Now get changed and leave before your sentimentality gets you killed." Naruto had changed and quickly left after that remark. He doubted that Kakuzu would carry through with his threat, considering how often his teacher made it, and especially since it seemed like he couldn't really die thanks to his supposed Kekkai Genkai. But there was no point in pissing him off when he seemed to be in a relatively giving mood. Unfortunately, the mission had so far gone not nearly as smoothly as Naruto had hoped. The minute he had come within a half-mile of his quarry on the border of the lands of grass and earth, Takashi had quickly fled, moving west towards the land of birds. That had been almost 3 days ago. Predator and prey had steadily passed through the land of birds and into another small nation. All the while, Naruto had been triggering Takashi's traps, tripwires, and exploding tags. The blonde was merely thankful for his amazing stamina. Constant movement and chakra expenditure for several days was no mean feat, and he was sure Takashi was using soldier pills to stagger on. The chase couldn't last much longer. After another 20 minutes of tree jumping, Naruto landed in an open field, a huge, foreboding castle erected before him. Looking around but seeing no one, he decided to approach the building. He opened the giant front doors and stepped through, taking a moment to allow his eyes to adjust to the gloom. Behind him, the door swung closed with an ominous sound, and immediately after turning to look at it, Naruto ducked to avoid the shuriken that were thrown at him from the darkness. They embedded themselves in the solid wood of the door, and Naruto inspected them briefly before muttering dryly, "Well, I guess he's here." "W, who are you, and W, what do you want W with me?" stammered a terrified voice from the dark. "I am," began Naruto, "your executioner." He paused briefly, a bright smile lighting up his face. "I've wanted to say that for so long." Kakuzu always had a strange way of intimidating people just by speaking his name, though the blonde supposed that his physical presence and deep voice helped with that. A kid's appearance and voice would only get him so far. "You sound like a kid," came the voice again, this time closer and more confident. Naruto looked up and saw Takashi on the second floor, leaning over the railing. His brown hair was unkempt and dirty, and his golden eyes glinted strangely from within sunken skin. "You are just a kid!" he exclaimed. Then he began laughing. "They sent a kid to take me out? Oh, that's rich!" He was stopped abruptly as a shuriken made a small cut on his cheek. "Next one won't miss," Naruto promised. "Kakuzu wanted you taken out, and I'm gonna do it." Takashi suddenly grew serious. "Kakuzu? And he sent you after me? He's severely underestimating me," he finished with a laugh. The rogue Kusanine then leapt from the balcony straight towards Naruto, kunai in hand. Naruto reached into one of his pockets and pulled out several shuriken. He threw them deftly with his right hand before performing hand seals. "Futon Ripusho," he muttered. Holding out both hands, palms forward, a gust of wind rushed from them, propelling the shuriken forward at a much faster velocity. Takashi angled his neck slightly, letting the shuriken pass right by him. "Ha! Is that all you've got, kid? You'll need more than that to defeat me?" A spurt of blood erupted from his neck, and the missing nin dropped to the floor, hand clasped to the wound. "What you?" he gurgled. Naruto walked up to him, making sure to stay far enough away that he wouldn't be caught off guard by any tricks. He held up his right hand, the one that had grabbed the shuriken. Attached to 3 of his fingers were thin, nearly invisible strands of ninja wire. "These were attached to the shuriken I threw at you. Ninja wire's pretty good at conducting chakra, so I channeled my wind chakra through the wires into the shuriken. Even though you dodged the actual weapon, the wind meant that you weren't getting away from me," he explained. The blonde watched as Takashi struggled to say something and failed, the light fading from his eyes. That was kinda lucky, wasn't even sure that'd work. And a nice catch with the jugular, he congratulated himself. Kakuzu had told him that his size and age would make others underestimate him initially, and taking advantage of that moment was key. As much as he hated to admit it, his teacher had been right. He removed the scroll Kakuzu had given him from his back and opened it on the floor. "Time to seal you and get out of here." "Devour." "Eh?" The 10-year-old turned around, confused. Then the tongues erupted from everywhere. Naruto had to backflip quickly to avoid being hit by one of the tongues. Another one tried to hit him, forcing him to duck quickly. A third tongue scooped up Takashi's corpse and disappeared through an open doorway. "Hey!" Naruto protested indignantly. "He's mine!" The distraction cost him. One tongue flailed wildly and caught the boy a hard blow upside the head, knocking him out. It rolled Naruto in its grasp and disappeared from where it came, along with all the others. The room was left empty and silent, a splatter of blood on the floor the only sign of any disturbance. "Devour." "Look." Naruto blearily opened his eyes, grasping his head with both hands as a searing pain rent through his skull. "What hit me?" Sitting up slowly, he looked around to take stock of his situation. He appeared to be in some sort of fleshy hallway that extended in both directions endlessly. The only things he appeared to be missing were the ceiling scroll and... Crap. Now I have to find that stupid body. He looked left and right, opting to go left. "Hope I chose the right way," he grumbled, setting off on the path. It took half an hour of wandering down the hallway, But he finally came across Takashi's corpse, nestled in a small crook of the fleshy wall. Finally, he sighed. Naruto walked up to the wall and took out a kunai, digging into the material binding his bounty. Devour. The blonde turned around at that voice, wary. Last time, tongues had shot out of the walls. He wasn't taking any chances. A pale green mist began to emanate from the wall behind him, and Naruto, curious, threw his kunai at it. It promptly melted, causing Naruto to blanch. Acid? Oh, come on! He brought out another kunai and applied wind chakra, lengthening it and sharpening the blade. Cutting swiftly through the fleshy wall freed his bounty, causing Takashi's dead weight to fall completely upon him. He shoved it off and chanced a glance behind him, noting the acid hovering mere feet away. Panicked, the blonde clasped his hands together and threw them both out perpendicularly from his body, shouting, "Futon, Ripusho!" The acid was blown away a fair distance due to the amount of chakra thrown into the technique, but began advancing quickly again. Plan B, Naruto thought. Tiger, ox, dog, rabbit, snake. Futon de Tapa. He yelled, this time pointing his hands up at the ceiling. A large blast of wind, sharper, denser, and stronger than the violent wind palm, flew from them, hitting the ceiling and cutting a circular tunnel out. Naruto immediately picked up Takashi bridal style and jumped, arriving on the first floor of the castle before the hole slowly knit closed behind him. Naruto panted in a mixture of fear and exhaustion, quickly locating the scroll he had left behind earlier and sealing the Kusanin's body into it. He picked up the scroll in time to observe a man walk out from one of the doorways leading to another room. He wore dark pants, a light gray, long-sleeved shirt with a red breastplate over it and green shoulder guards, as well as a tall blue helmet that was strapped under his chin. What the? Naruto began as the man walked past him. The man was suddenly surrounded by an ethereal blue glow, and Naruto fell silent as he walked slowly up the stairs. Entranced, the blonde slipped the scroll containing Takashi's body into a holder on his back and followed the other man upstairs. After several flights of stairs, Naruto arrived at what he surmised to be one of the castle's many towers. He blinked rapidly and looked around, realizing the man was no longer in front of him. Well, time to go, he started, right before his blue eyes spied something on the other side of the room. What's that? On an altar was placed a scroll that looked worn with age, which Naruto promptly unrolled. Across the top and bottom was an artistic border of some type of lizard, though what kind Naruto couldn't specify. The middle portion contained names and the fingerprints of people imprinted in dried blood. He stared at the scroll blankly until something Kakuzu had once told him caused a wide grin to split his face. Some shinobi have the ability to summon animals to assist them in a fight, Kakuzu lectured. These shinobi are typically part of a clan who has a contract that it passes down through the generations, and when its members are old enough, they are allowed to sign the contract and summon the animals in a method comparable to summoning weapons from a scroll. Konoha Sannin, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru are perhaps some of the most notable possessors of summoning contracts in recent times, able to call upon the toads, slugs, and snakes, respectively. That said, summoning contracts are rather rare, so I do not expect you to have to deal with them often, if at all, but you should be aware of their existence. Kakuzu had never mentioned summoning again because they had never had a situation arise where they needed to talk about it. But even from his teacher's vague description, it was entirely possible that the scroll before him was a summoning contract. Devour. With that word, acid began to seep from the walls into the small room. Naruto didn't even think. Copying the example of the people before him, he quickly bit his index finger hard enough to draw blood and wrote his name in the next blank spot on the paper, following it up by biting the rest of the digits on his right hand and pressing the entire appendage to the page. Stop! He shouted, eyes tightly closed. It took but a second for the acid mist to stop advancing and slowly begin to dissipate. 10 seconds later, the room was clear. Naruto opened his eyes. I'm good, he said, surprised. Now go away. There was a small delay, followed by a rather loud pop and a cloud of smoke, leaving Naruto suspended hundreds of feet in the air, scroll in front of him. Oh! He screamed, body plummeting towards the ground. Futon, Ripusho! He shouted, aiming his hands at the ground. The violent wind palms slowed his descent enough that he released the technique 10 feet above the ground, landing nimbly in a crouch. He plopped to the ground with a sigh, summoning scroll in front of him. Naruto exhaled heavily, the recent slew of events catching up to him. What a day, he muttered. He stood up and picked up the contract, tying both ends to a piece of rope he had on him. He then slung the scroll over his back, where it knocked against the one containing Takashi's body. Wait till Kakuzu sees this haul. The blonde walked toward the tree line at a sedate pace. Upon reaching it, he jumped for a low branch and disappeared into the foliage, leaving the land of Nek far behind. It took over a week to return to Onanji, the blonde moving unhurriedly after his harrowing adventure. When Naruto found Kakuzu meditating at their usual spot in the late morning, the bounty hunter appeared severely disgruntled. You were gone longer than I anticipated, Kakuzu noted with practiced blandness, opening first one eye, then the other. Naruto reached back and rubbed the back of his head embarrassedly. Ahihi, Takashi led me on quite a chase, and his hide-and spot proved to be really dangerous. Here's his body, he added, removing the scroll with the kusanine sealed inside. Good, Kakuzu stated, climbing to his feet and taking the scroll from his pupil. That is one less headache I must deal with. Then his eyes caught sight of the other object strapped to Naruto's back. Why do you have an extra scroll? Naruto tried to fight back a wide grin but failed. Oh, this? He asked coyly. Just something I picked up on the trip. I was hoping you'd be able to explain it more clearly. Kakuzu quirked an eyebrow as his apprentice removed the scroll from his back and laid it on the ground, unrolling it slowly. His eyes widened slightly when he saw what it was, but he quickly schooled his features back into a neutral expression. It appears that you have stumbled across the long-lost chameleon summoning contract of the Kubasaki clan. The blond boy bounced excitedly on his heels. It really is a summoning contract. I found it in an old castle that tried to eat me after chasing Takashi for 3 days, he told his teacher. Kakuzu digested this information and then nodded. Takashi must have led you into the land of Nek. 50 years ago, the Kubasaki clan, who ruled that area, was deeply embroiled in war. Outnumbered, the remaining Kubasaki members were forced to retreat into their castle. It was rumored that Kubasaki Koza, the clan head notorious for his chameleon-like techniques, summoned a giant beast before his death and told it to destroy anyone that dared enter his domain. The aggressors were never heard from again, though the Kubasaki clan has also never been heard from either. Well, that explains the repetitive devour I kept hearing, Naruto mumbled. So how does this thing work? He asked aloud. I signed it cause I was in a bit of a bind, but I don't really know how to use it. Can you teach me? The bounty hunter snorted. There is little I do not know. As I told you before, summoners have a blood link with a specific animal that they can call upon to aid in battle. The amount of shinobi who use summons are small, though, as many of the more useful ones require vast amounts of chakra. Not that that is a problem for you, Kakuzu added dryly. The hand seals for the Kuchios no Jutsu are boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram. It is a requirement to make a blood offering when performing the technique, so most shinobi tend to bite their thumb before they perform the signs. Then you just need to place your palm on a solid surface and call the summon you want. When Kakuzu didn't continue, Naruto asked, Is that it? Kakuzu shot him an annoyed look. Would I not tell you if there was more? Now you just need to practice. Naruto didn't bother saying it would be just like his teacher to withhold information, instead biting his thumb hard enough to break skin and performing the required seals. Kuchios no Jutsu, he yelled, slamming his palm to the ground. The inky whorls of a seal spread out from his palm, and a poof of smoke accompanied it before a tiny chameleon, no longer than Naruto's finger, appeared. Naruto stared at it blankly while Kakuzu fought down an uncharacteristic bark of laughter. You obviously need more practice, Kakuzu said as the lizard disappeared in another poof of smoke. I shall return later. Dusk had fallen by the time Naruto made any headway on the new technique. As sweat dripped down his face, Naruto performed the seals once more and panted, Kuchios no Jutsu. When the smoke cleared, a small chameleon, roughly the size of Naruto's forearm, stood in front of him on all fours. He was a bright green color, a few white spots sprinkled over his body, and a cylindrical brown container strapped to his back under his belly. His tongue flicked out experimentally, his left eye focusing on Kakuzu, who stood a short distance away, while his right eye stared at Naruto. What is it? He demanded haughtily, voice shrill with youth. For his part, Naruto stood there, completely flabbergasted. Finally he gasped, I did it. He laughed heartily before blinking stupidly. Wait, did you talk? The lizard scoffed at him, focusing his left eye on Naruto as well. Course I can talk. Name's Kamasada. He eyed Naruto carefully, and the blonde repressed a shudder as both eyes went in different directions. What do you want? He repeated. Kakuzu chose that moment to step in. Kamasada, inform the one in charge that we would like to speak to him. Kamasada's left eye swiveled back to Kakuzu and appraised him quietly. Fine, he agreed finally. I'll let Aji-san know he's wanted. Didn't even get a long time back, he grumbled. With that, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto, Kakuzu began, this will require a lot of chakra. You will need to gather as much as you can, more than you think yourself capable of, and push it all into the technique. But first, follow me. Kakuzu took off into the woods, Naruto following until the bounty hunter stopped in a clearing Naruto identified as the place where the wind release, pressure damage technique had been demonstrated 2 years prior. We are far enough from the village and it is dark enough that there should not be too much of a disturbance. Naruto nodded in compliance, and closed his eyes to collect what little chakra he had remaining. More, he thought, still more. Deep within Naruto's mindscape, an eye pupil slit and red, the size of a grown man, opened. The creature to which it belonged released a deep chuckle. You need chakra, child? Very well, I shall comply for now. But this is merely the beginning. The eye closed again, but a foul orange-red chakra emanated from the creature and disappeared into the mindscape. Naruto was already partway through the hand seals when he became shrouded in an orange-red cloak of chakra. Kakuzu's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did nothing but observe as Naruto slammed his palm on the ground and roared, "Kuchiyose no Jutsu." A whirlwind of wind and smoke exploded from under where Naruto stood, and when it cleared, he was standing 100 feet off the ground. The creature Naruto had summoned was massive, easily as tall as the castle Naruto had been in earlier, and several times as long, including its curled tail. Its skin was a mottled green, each foot possessing wickedly sharp claws. The head was decorated with 3 horns, 2 smaller ones, 20 feet long, between its eyes, and a 40-foot one protruding from its snout. "Koza?" asked the chameleon, voice coarse like sandpaper and distinctly masculine. His eyes swiveled all around, finally focusing upwards, where Naruto stood in the middle of the triangle of horns. "No, you're not even a Kubasaki. Who are you, boy?" Naruto gulped but managed to eke out, "My name's Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm the newest summoner, I guess." The chameleon grumbled. Kamisada could have at least mentioned that. "I am Shiromori, the leader of the chameleons of the Bankaku forest. For what reason have you summoned me, Uzumaki Naruto?" The blonde looked at Kakuzu helplessly, who sighed in defeat. "I asked that you be summoned, Shiromori-sama," the mercenary stated with a slight inclination of his head. "Propriety dictates that the boy should take time to become properly acquainted with the leader of his new potential partners." Shiromori watched Kakuzu with one eye and kept the other on Naruto. After a long moment, which included Kakuzu standing completely stationary and Naruto fidgeting restlessly, the chameleon grunted. "Since you have the contract, I presume that it was you who saved me from that wretched existence Koza trapped me in. For that I am grateful. My family and myself owe you a great debt, Uzumaki Naruto. We are humbly at your service." "Really? Cool." The chameleon boss eyed him for a moment. "Yes, well then. If you don't mind, I'd like to see my family. Lots of catching up to do, you understand. Do not hesitate to call if you need assistance, Uzumaki Naruto. We of the chameleon tribe will respond." Then Shiromori disappeared in the same poof of smoke and whirling wind he had appeared in, and Naruto fell to the ground. Kakuzu caught him just before he impacted. "Do not say that I have never done anything for you, Uzumaki Naruto," he groused, the subject of his ire resting sleepily against his back. "Accursed brat causes too much fucking trouble." Naruto floated on the border between consciousness and sleep, the week's events finally catching up to his 10-year-old body. As darkness overtook his vision, the blonde had one last thought. Was there a voice in my head right before I summoned Shiromori-sama? You need chakra, child? Very well, I shall comply for now. But this is merely the beginning. The statement seemed to echo in Naruto's dream, chilling him down to his very core. It had repeated every so often, like a haunting memory that Naruto couldn't quite place but knew he had heard before, the voice familiar, and yet not at the same time. There was something about the voice that bothered him, but the 10-year-old couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, just that it seemed to radiate hatred and evil. Damnable seal. You're lucky I can't take control right now. Naruto looked around in search of the owner of the voice, but all he saw was an unending darkness. The last thing he could remember was talking to Shiromori. The giant chameleon had told Naruto to call upon him in a time of need, and then nothing. I must have passed out, Naruto deduced. But that doesn't explain what's going on here. The blonde noticed that his dream appeared to lighten, casting just enough light to illuminate where he was. He seemed to be standing in several inches of water in what, his nose told him, must have been a sewer. A massive wrought iron gate stood in front of him, and Naruto took a small step forward in order to better make out the word seal inscribed on a piece of paper far above him. He looked around, but after noting nothing else, turned his attention back to the gate. Suddenly, 2 blood-red eyes opened wide, accompanied by the wide, feral maw of some beast behind the gate. "Let me out!" roared the creature, leaking out enough killer intent to make Naruto scream. Naruto shot up, instinctively grabbing for the kunai he normally kept by his bedroll and bringing it defensively to his chest. Kakuzu chose that moment to stroll in through the door. The door? Naruto wondered absently, and loomed ominously over the bed. "You look rather stupid in that position with nothing in your hand," he commented idly. Naruto realized that the kunai he had attempted to grab was nothing but air, and so he lowered his arm and sat up further in the bed, a real bed. He grasped the blanket in one hand, running his hand over the soft padding of the mattress underneath as if to confirm that it was real. "Where are we?" Naruto asked. "That is unimportant. Tell me what happened." "It is important," Naruto insisted. "And I could ask you the same thing, what happened?" The two made eye contact for a solid minute before Kakuzu made a breathy sound that Naruto took to be a sigh of resigned frustration. "I rented a room for a night so you could recover. You exhausted your chakra practicing Kuchio's no jutsu yesterday, especially by summoning the chameleon boss. You have been asleep for almost a day. Now, what happened?" he demanded. The blonde was quiet as he collected his thoughts. "I want a sword," he said with finality, ignoring his teacher's question. "There is no basis for you needing a sword, nor a reason for bringing it up," Kakuzu replied curtly. "But think about it. How kick-ass would I be if I had a sword?" he rambled. "I could." "Your non sequitur bores me and evades my question," interrupted the older ninja. "Tell me what happened." Naruto thought about lying to avoid the subject, but then decided against it. Kakuzu could be rather intimidating when he chose to be, and his ire seemed to be rising, a sure sign that screwing around with him was a bad idea. "When I summoned Shiromori-sama," he began slowly, "I thought I heard a voice in my head. It said something about me needing chakra, and that it would comply for now. Then," Naruto shrugged, "I was able to summon Shiromori-sama." Kakuzu began moving steadily around the room, a movement that Naruto would have described as pacing if it weren't for the fact that Kakuzu never paced. He seemed to be muttering something to himself, and Naruto caught the word seal, chakra, and finally Kyubi. His eyes became wide as saucers on the last word. "Wait, what?" "When is your birthday?" Kakuzu demanded seriously. "October 10th, he replied. "Why? And what about the Kyubi? Isn't it dead?" "So it is as I suspected," Kakuzu muttered. "You are from Konoha," he stated coldly. Naruto gulped at how tense the room seemed to get at those words. The blonde shook his head nervously, suddenly aware that admitting such a fact was probably not the best idea. "And no, I'm not. Your birthday coincides with the date that the Kyubi attacked Konoha." "So? What does that have to do with anything?" Kakuzu shot him a glance. "You are the Jinchuriki of the legendary Kyubi no Yoko." Naruto was stunned. What? "No, the fourth Hokage killed it." The blonde was interrupted by Kakuzu's throaty laugh. His teacher chuckled for a bit before settling himself imposingly in front of Naruto's bed. "I have been in contact with a representative of several persons who have a vested interest in the Biju," Kakuzu began with an imperial air. "As a result, I have become acquainted with a good degree of knowledge about them. First of all, you have a massive chakra supply, one that will most likely surpass my own once you reach your fullest potential. Secondly, those whisker-like markings on your cheeks are a trait of the Kyubi within you, which most Jinchuriki possess. And I have already explained the third part, you are from Konoha and share a birthday with the anniversary of the Kyubi's so-called death. Incidentally, the Biju are unable to be killed." He paused briefly before concluding, "I believe that should be enough evidence to satisfy you." The younger ninja remained silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Finally, "So the voice in my head is the Kyubi attempting to make contact with you," Kakuzu confirmed. "What else?" he asked quietly. What else do you know about the Biju, or these Jinjin?" "Jinchuriki," Kakuzu supplied, "are the human hosts who have a Biju sealed inside of them." He reached into one of his sleeves and rummaged around, pulling out a photograph and holding it up for Naruto to see. The girl depicted had mint green hair and pupilless orange eyes, and wore tattered street clothing that covered brown skin. "This is Fu, the host of the Nanabai no Kabutamushi from Takigakure. One of my contacts took this picture and passed it along to me." Naruto carefully took the picture from Kakuzu, staring at it intently. After a minute, he folded it carefully and set it on the dresser next to the bed. Teacher and student were silent until the blonde could no longer bear it. "Do you hate me?" he asked carefully, avoiding eye contact. "Should I?" "Everyone else did," mumbled the blonde. "I presume that you are referring to the people of Konoha." Naruto nodded, prompting Kakuzu to continue. "From what I have heard, Jinchuriki are often hated and or feared by the people of their country because they are often reminded of the demon within and of nothing else. Having been unaffected by the Kyubi's attack, I have no reason to scorn you. You have proven yourself to be a valuable commodity, and I see no reason currently to discontinue our arrangement." After a brief pause, Kakuzu inquired, "I can only assume that is the reason you left Konoha?" "Yeah," Naruto replied. Everyone there hated me. I thought it was because my family did something and then were killed. But now Naruto's fist clenched the blanket in anger. I find out it was because of the Kyuubi, this monster that lives inside of me. I was protecting them from it, he insisted. Kakuzu nodded. You will discover that the stupidity of people knows no bounds. Your good deeds will often go unnoticed and indeed be scorned, even if it is undeserved. Angry at having discovered the real reason behind his isolation in Konoha, Naruto wasn't quite thinking very clearly when he scoffed. What do you know about scorn? The statement was like a catalyst. Naruto choked as Kakuzu's hand shot out and latched around his throat, gripping tightly before slowly retracting towards the bounty hunter. Kakuzu brought Naruto up to his face, strange green eyes as hard as diamonds and staring into Naruto's scared blue orbs. Do not, he began, speaking low and slow, pretend to understand what I have been through. I know more of scorn than you ever will, he continued in a dangerous tone, so do not think that your status as a Jinchuriki makes you special. Naruto's hands scrambled frantically for purchase on Kakuzu's much larger one, his face starting to turn blue from lack of oxygen. After another few seconds of letting the blonde try to pry his hand free, Kakuzu relaxed his grip, allowing his student to collapse to the floor and gulp in great mouthfuls of much-needed air. You have learned your lesson? Kakuzu stated coolly. Naruto could only nod, not quite ready to use his voice yet. The mercenary waited another couple of minutes before saying in a voice that left no room for argument, Tell me of your past. The blonde jerked in surprise before staring at his teacher with wide eyes. Do not assume I care for your background, Kakuzu told him in the same cold tone. I am merely curious. I don't really remember much, Naruto admitted quietly. There was an orphanage that I stayed at, but I was always ignored by the people in charge, and the other kids never really hung out with me. I remember a lot of hatred, he reminisced softly, but I could never figure out why. I snuck into the library when I could to try and teach myself to read and write, and sometimes to figure out why everybody hated me, but I didn't get far and couldn't find anything. The shopkeepers always glared at me and chased me out, and most of the ninja ignored me. I remember deciding that my family must have done something really bad, gotten removed from all the books, and that I was the only one left. That's when I left and met you. Naruto lapsed into silence after his tale, and Kakuzu seemed to stare right through him as he digested the boy's story. At length, the bounty hunter said Naruto's name. The Jinchuriki looked up at his mentor, reading nothing on Kakuzu's face. You remind me of me, he said finally. Naruto inhaled sharply at this. What? When I was an elite jonin, Kakuzu began, the elders of Takigakure assigned me a special mission. I was told to kill the Shodai Hokage. Naruto's wide blue eyes grew larger at this pronouncement. What? You heard me, Kakuzu said. Now be quiet, brat. Naruto fell silent at this demand, and his teacher took a moment to recompose himself before continuing. I snuck into the village proper and attempted to assassinate him, but I failed. I led him on a chase to the location known now as the Valley of the End. We clashed there, just the two of us, but despite my prowess in Suiton techniques, intelligence, and relatively large chakra reserves, I was soundly defeated by Senju Hashirama and his powerful Mokuton techniques. A unique Kekkai Genkai that allowed him to manipulate wood, he clarified, seeing Naruto about to ask. It made him the most powerful and feared shinobi of the day. I returned to my village after attempting to complete this impossible task, and what was I greeted with? Naruto remained silent, sure that this was a rhetorical question. He was proven right a moment later when Kakuzu roared scorn. His ire raised by the reminder of his past. Threads erupted from his body in a display of his brief lapse in control before he calmed down, returning to the stiff, rigid man Naruto normally saw him as. My village believed that I did not try hard enough and punished me for failing in my objective. For years I had served that village faithfully and with complete dedication, taking any task that was asked of me. This blatant disrespect for all of my servitude infuriated and offended me, so I left. But I did not go without prizes, he added with an unseen malevolent grin. Kakuzu held out his right arm, pulling back the sleeve to reveal dark flesh embroidered with sutures. Something wriggled underneath his skin like live snakes before popping out of a large stitch on his forearm, revealing themselves to be black threads. I stole Takigakure's most precious treasures, the Kenjutsu Jiangu and the hearts of the village elders, who did not appreciate my service to their precious village, he hissed sadistically. This, he concluded, pointing at the slash across his waterfall forehead protector, was the final separation between me and my village. That is when my current life truly began. His narrative finished, Kakuzu waited for Naruto to digest the tale before speaking again. Naruto, he stated, do you understand why our histories are comparable? The blonde nodded slowly, prompting taller shinobi to continue. It is up to you what you will do now. What do you mean? We have been associated for 5 years now. Now that you know my history, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you return to your village, or any village, and attempt to capitalize on this information, or will you stay here with me? You do not yet have a name among Nuknin, and it would be understandable if you wish to regain some semblance of a normal life, though if you spoke of me I would be forced to kill you. I'm staying, Naruto told him firmly. I'm not afraid of your threats. You're the first person to ever take the time to teach me anything sometimes, and I still have a lot more to learn. Besides, he added darkly, if Konoha didn't want me, then I don't want it. I want to show everyone there that they should be afraid of me. Kakuzu remained silent as a slow smirk stretched across his mouth. It was fortunate that the blonde had chosen to stay, because the alternative would have resulted in his pupil's death, Jinchuriki or no. He couldn't have anyone going around spilling his secrets, after all, and the boy's body would fetch a high price if his death was necessary. He will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. How amusing. Then it is time to create another link between us. Come here. Naruto stepped forward as the bounty hunter remained stationary. After several seconds of doing nothing, the blonde noticed a large bulge moving from Kakuzu's upper arm to his forearm, finally reaching the stitch in his forearm before slowly being expelled by several black threads. Kakuzu grabbed the object with his left hand, pulling it out and revealing it to be a small scroll. The tall man bent down and placed it on the floor, unraveling it to reveal an older parchment with a black ring inscribed in the center. Do you trust me? Kakuzu asked. Yeah. Kakuzu nodded. Simply place your palm within the circle, he ordered. The 10-year-old gulped nervously, but nodded in understanding. He knelt down to place his right hand directly within the black ring. It glowed blue momentarily, and the kanji for Jiangu appeared in it as Kakuzu took several large steps backwards. That was when a veritable mass of black threads erupted from the black ring in between his fingers, shooting upwards in a seemingly endless stream. They seemed to hit a peak, stopping in midair only to angle downwards with Naruto as the focal point. The blonde almost stepped backwards, but Kakuzu's commanding bark of "Stay still" stopped him. The next thing Naruto knew, someone was screaming. It took a moment to realize that it was him screaming, the sound continuous and racked with pain. The threads were burying into his body, completely bypassing his clothing and tearing into every inch of skin available below the neck. The entire process only took a minute, but to Naruto it seemed to last an eternity. When it was over, he laid in a ball on the ground, body spasming and voice hoarse from screaming. Kakuzu stepped forward and rolled the scroll back up, allowing the threads within his body to wrap around it and pull it back into hiding. I would have warned you, but I believe that experience is the hallmark of learning, Kakuzu announced from above him, and Naruto could practically hear the sadistic glee dripping from the bounty hunter's voice. Kakuzu bent down and lifted Naruto's left arm, pulling back the sleeve of the gray shirt he wore to reveal a thick black band inked into the boy's skin, halfway between the wrist and elbow of each arm. This is the sign that you now possess Jiangu, Kakuzu declared. This is Takigeku's most precious technique, greater than even the fabled hero's water of old, and you are now the second person to be granted its power. You have a year to gain control of it, and I will not train you how to use it. Like me, you will struggle to understand its power, but I believe that you have the potential to utilize it successfully. If you cannot use it by the end of a year, I will strip it from you, a process which may kill you. Take the time to recover while you can. I have to meet with someone. With that, he left the room. The mercenary wandered past his and Naruto's normal training grounds, entering the forest and walking to where Shiromari had been summoned the previous day. Upon reaching the spot, he held his arm out, allowing one thread to wriggle free from his body and deposit something into his hand. He stared at the object, a tiny black seed, for a moment before channeling his chakra into it and letting it fall to the ground. It only took 15 seconds to get the response he was waiting for. What do you want? Spoke the dark voice of Zetsu from behind him. Kakuzu turned around slowly, no longer surprised at Zetsu's strange ability to merge with and meld out of anything and everything. You told me I could contact you when I deemed it necessary by pushing my chakra into this seed, Kakuzu intoned. I am slightly surprised to find that it worked, he added as an afterthought. Zetsu snorted. You still doubt my abilities, after all this time. If I give you information, you should trust that the information is accurate. Now, what do you want? He repeated. Kakuzu took a moment to note that Zetsu's white half was unusually silent, theorizing that the seed ability was perhaps unique only to Black Zetsu, which meant that the two halves could actually function independently. Suddenly Zetsu's usefulness and power became even clearer. I require your assistance in finding someone. I believe that Akatsuki's contacts trumps mine in sheer quantity, meaning you have a better source of quality at your disposal for information. Who are you looking for? Zetsu demanded, cutting straight to the chase. Kakuzu told him, and a sinister smile spread over White Zetsu's lips, the only motion he had made thus far. I know just the person you want to find, Black Zetsu told him, the mirth evident in his voice. Kakuzu wasn't kidding when he said it would be a struggle to understand Jiangyu, thought Naruto. It had been 3 months since the former Takinin had bestowed the kenjutsu upon his student, and the first week had been spent in a struggle with the pain caused by the technique. Kakuzu had moved them out of the hotel room after that first night. A waste of money, he commented dismissively with a wave of his hand, and Naruto had spent that next week trying to use the technique and collapsing in agony. All the while, his teacher had watched him mutely. The bounty hunter had also been serious when he said that he wouldn't train Naruto in the ability. Arguably, it wasn't all that different from his regular teaching methodology, but Jiangyu was also far more difficult to understand than the basics of taijutsu or elemental ninjutsu. Naruto was all on his own as far as a training schedule and what to practice, which meant he didn't have to hear Kakuzu's mocking sneers and dry sarcasm with respect to his talents and progress, though he wondered if that wouldn't have been preferable to the silence. So far, Naruto had done very little with respect to using the black threads now within his body, though not really by choice. They seemed to retain some semblance of autonomy, almost sentience, and so he had spent the past 3 months attempting to find a way to control them. He was currently standing in front of a tree shirtless, with one arm outstretched in front on his body. Focusing intently upon the tree, several threads shot out from the bands on his arms and pierced the trunk in places that Naruto imagined were vital spots on the average human male. "You seem to be making progress, brat." Naruto turned around to see his mentor standing behind him, arms folded across his chest. "Yeah?" he asked, excited. "How long did it take you to do that?" "I would prefer not to embarrass you on such a prolific occasion," returned the hunter idly. When Naruto scowled, Kakuzu unfolded his arms and stepped towards the blonde. "I came to let you know that I must venture out to find someone. I do not know when I will return." "That's unusually vague," Naruto commented, eyebrow quirked in suspicion. His teacher normally gave him an idea of where he was going, or who he was hunting, or something. To hear none of that was strange. "It is," agreed Kakuzu before turning away, elaborating no further. And there was one more thing before Naruto could ask what it was. Kakuzu had spun around and launched his hand forward, grabbing a kunai from the pouch on Naruto's thigh and bringing it in an upward arc at Naruto's arm. The blonde didn't even have time to react as Kakuzu used a combination of his monstrous strength and wind chakra to cleave straight through his arm, just below the elbow. His deed done, Kakuzu dropped the kunai, leaving Naruto staring at his arm on the ground. The blonde attempted to say something, yell at Kakuzu, scream in pain, but nothing came out. He remained mesmerized as, in the next second, threads popped out from the end of his arm on the ground and the stump of his arm still attached to his body. They mingled together and pulled the severed appendage from the forest floor to Naruto's forearm, disappearing under his skin. A band of stitch marks, an exact replica of the location of one of Kakuzu's, was the only thing left to show that the arm had ever been detached in the first place. Naruto looked up to either yell or thank Kakuzu, he wasn't entirely sure which, but the other ninja had already disappeared. It took about a month and a half of Kakuzu's precious time, but after following Zetsu's directions, he finally found who he was looking for. "I have a request to make of you," he told the taller of the two men in front of him. The giant of a man listened to Kakuzu's request with a bored expression, but by the end he was grinning broadly. "You've got yourself a deal, newbie," accepted the other man, his evil smirk revealing row upon row of sharp teeth. "I'm always up for fresh meat." Naruto bent low, performing a picture-perfect sweep kick on his imaginary opponent. He immediately raised his left arm, the one Kakuzu had cut off 6 months prior, and prompted several threads to shoot out from the stitches and pierce the air. They moved in a downward arc and stuck into a tree, spread out in a fashion such that a real person would be pinned spread-eagle into the trunk. Naruto walked forward, hands still outstretched, and pulled out a kunai, applying a small amount of wind chakra and holding it up to his pretend foe's throat. "Game, set, and match," he pronounced with a grin. "You seem to have acquired an acceptable amount of control over Jiangyu, brat, though perhaps you should consider fighting against an adversary who can actually fight back." "Kakuzu, you're back," greeted Naruto, turning around to face his mentor. "And you brought a friend," he noted slyly. "Hardly," snorted the mercenary, dropping the corpse of a white-haired male wearing ANBU armor from his shoulder. He rolled said shoulder lazily and cracked his neck, the sound echoing in the quiet clearing. "The trip to Kirigakure was well worth the bounty this one will fetch." "You were gone a long time," huffed Naruto, plopping to the ground and poking the missed ANBU idly with his foot. Kakuzu cuffed him from afar, his student not even flinching from the hit. "I would like to see you penetrate Kirigakure's defenses with your measly skills," retorted the hunter. "Considering how difficult it is to get into the country, remain inconspicuous, find and capture the target, and then escape without raising suspicion, 2 months is hardly a long time. I expect you will take at least 6 your first time. Aha, Naruto agreed absently. Why the hell did you lug him all the way back without a sealing scroll anyway? I enjoy carrying the weight of my victims' bodies personally, he claimed, a tinge of pleased sadism in his voice. There is a high degree of satisfaction in carrying the amount of money you are to be compensated on your back. Perhaps you will understand in time, when you are stronger. Naruto harumphed unhappily, but let the acerbic comment go. Come, intoned Kakuzu, reaching down to pick up the corpse. You have had 9 months to train with Jiangu, and it looks as if you are ready for the next step. Really? Exclaimed Naruto. What's the next step? And where are we going? He continued, jumping up and skipping up to Kakuzu's side. Kakuzu shot him a look that the blonde chose to ignore. After a moment, the bounty hunter said, I plan on cashing in my prize. Then we are going to continue your training. I thought you weren't going to help me with my training, Naruto chirped innocently. Kakuzu's look turned into a full-on glare. He reached over and shoved the blonde sideways with enough force to make Naruto impact a nearby tree and fall to the ground. Do not look a gift horse in the mouth, brat. When you get something free, take it, judge its usefulness, and then keep it or sell it. Now get up and shut up. Naruto pulled himself off of the ground and shook his head. He thought that he detected a hint of mirth in his teacher's voice but paid it no heed, too busy watching the swirling, colored dots dance in front of his eyes. Naruto would never understand what idiot came up with the idea of putting an bounty exchange station within a bathroom. Granted, the smell of the bathroom would likely hide the stench of any corpses brought in, but still a bathroom? He held back a gag as Kakuzu tapped on the wall between 2 urinals, revealing a bald man with a dark mustache and goatee, a deep scar above his right eyebrow. The man stared at Kakuzu and Naruto for only a moment over the rim of his trench coat before turning around and beckoning them to enter. Kakuzu greeted the man, walking over to the wall and pulling out a drawer. It's been some time. I see you even brought your protege back this time. Naruto, right? The blonde nodded as he and his teacher stepped forward to the open drawer, which turned out to be a sturdy table. You would do well to remember his name, Zangiai, retorted Kakuzu brusquely. He is well on his way to becoming a capable bounty hunter, meaning that you will have increased interaction with him in the future. Zangiai merely nodded, gesturing for Kakuzu to lay the corpse on the table. The former Takinin complied silently. I will keep it in mind. Now, who do we have today? The scarred man pulled out a bingo book and began rifling through its pages, reaching the section for Kirigakure and beginning to flip slower. Oh, it looks like you brought in a big haul, Kakuzu. Hozuki Mangetsu, ANBU rank, and a member of the 7 shinobi swordsmen of the mist, Kumogakure and Kyuzugakure both put 65 million ryo on his head. He must have been quite the fight. It was well worth the reward, returned Kakuzu. Brat, he stated, turning his attention to Naruto, we are headed to the land of Earth next. Pick a target from this while I count the money, he ordered, tossing Naruto his own bingo book. Naruto flipped slowly through the pages in an imitation of his teacher, who was fingering through the money Zangiai had handed him in a briefcase. After several minutes, Naruto turned the book towards Kakuzu, pointing at the right page. Him, he stated simply. Kakuzu looked up from the wad of cash in his hands, staring intently at the page before inclining his head in a brief nod. Shortly thereafter, the locking click of the briefcase could be heard. We shall be on our way, Kakuzu bade Zangiai. The scarred man nodded in understanding, showing Kakuzu and Naruto to the door before closing it discreetly behind him. Let us go, intoned the mercenary with a swish of his cloak. It only took a couple of hours of clipped travel to cross through the land of grass and reach the border of the land of earth from where the exchange point was stationed, but Naruto was grateful for the time. Kakuzu had spent a lot of time drilling into his head that he needed to think things through, but even still, it was difficult to do so unless it was quiet. The blonde knew that this wasn't a normal hunt. Despite having been on only 2 bounty chases, Kakuzu had only accompanied him once, and the 11-year-old hadn't chosen the target in either case. The handling of the bingo book had been the first indication that something was different about this particular case. Most of the time, Kakuzu just told Naruto where he was going and who he was to capture. Suspicious, Naruto had purposefully chosen a low-value target, barely a jonin and worth next to nothing. On any other occasion, Kakuzu wouldn't have even wasted his time with such a pointless mission, and more likely than not would have attempted to beat the ever-loving shit out of Naruto for even suggesting the hunt. But to say nothing and merely nod his acceptance of the blonde's choice? Something was up, and Naruto was determined to find out what. Hey Kakuzu, why are we going after this guy? You chose him, replied the tall man curtly. When he didn't elaborate, Naruto decided to try again. Yeah, but you never go for these small fries. So why were you suddenly all for it? Kakuzu smirked beneath his mask. So you knew. The blonde nodded. I just don't understand why. Kakuzu halted suddenly, the action surprising Naruto. Have you ever wondered how I am able to utilize all 5 elements? Years of practice and experience? Shrugged Naruto unsurely. The mercenary snorted. That is one component, yes. However, the original abilities are a power of the black threads that now course through your body. It took a moment to digest exactly what the older ninja was saying. You mean Jianga gave you that power? His teacher rolled his eyes. Precisely. Jianga has far more uses than you have discovered thus far, and you're not taking full advantage of them is an embarrassment. This, he continued, unzipping and throwing off the trench coat he always wore, is what we are after. Naruto gaped unashamedly at Kakuzu's back. Stitches, prized marks of the Kinjutsu stolen years ago from the hidden waterfall, crisscrossed his body, turning him into a parody of some demented ragdoll. The truly impressive feature was the 4 animal masks, Imbu masks, he realized, held seamlessly in place on his back. Each of these, lectured Kakuzu, contains the heart of an opponent I have fought and killed. Continually replacing them has allowed me to extend my life, and use the remaining 4 nature chakras. Now, he finished, shrugging his cloak back on, it is your turn. We are traveling to the land of Earth so that you can begin to use this secondary function of Jiangu. Why? Managed Naruto. Kakuzu chose to read through the subtext and answer his pupil's real question. You are wind-natured, which means you are naturally weak against fire users and strong against lightning users. To support your weaknesses, you will require Sudan and Doton-aligned hearts in order to properly cover the gamut of elemental chakra. Now let us continue. You know how I hate wasting time. Naruto trudged along just slightly behind Kakuzu, his mind caught in a daze from trying to process all of the new information he'd been presented. If his teacher was going to give some sort of long-winded dissertation every time he answered a question, Naruto was probably better off not asking some things. So now that you've told me why we're in the land of Earth, does it really matter who I target? No, Kakuzu responded. You did choose a rather pathetic target, one not even worthy of our time, he added dryly. Bite me, retorted the blonde, flinching seconds later as Kakuzu shot him a chilly glare that promised pain. So he drawled nervously, staring at the rocky terrain of the land of Earth and counting the border guards. Now what? Pick one of the pathetic shinobi in front of you to fight, and I will dispatch of the remainder, Kakuzu answered lowly, a manic glint entering his eyes. Naruto shuddered. He had noticed over the years that Kakuzu had rather frequent homicidal urges, and while the frequency with which he attacked Naruto had declined over time, he suspected that the reason the bounty hunter had a habit of being gone more than he was present was to satiate his murderous desires. The 11-year-old almost felt sorry for the rock Chunin on border patrol. He nodded to show he understood, and then both ninja moved. Naruto veered slightly to the right, aiming for the Chunin furthest from the rest. Kakuzu, noticing this, followed the blonde slightly, cutting off the other 4 Iwanin from Naruto's target. You have to get past me first, grinned Kakuzu, his skin darkening. Show me your worth. Meanwhile, Naruto cornered his own prey, a young man in his late teens with sandy brown hair and green eyes. Said orbs flickered intermittently in Kakuzu's direction, where Naruto could only presume his teacher was making short work of the other ninja. After allowing this action to continue for a couple of minutes, Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. You know, maybe you should pay attention to your real opponent. His words seemed to galvanize the Iwanin, who suddenly became more focused on the blonde. He ran through a short string of hand seals, putting his hands to the ground and causing several spires to rise from it. Naruto jumped to the right before leaping back to his original spot as more earthen spires erupted from the ground, reaching with one hand towards his weapons pouch. How have you not finished yet? Called Kakuzu, interrupting Naruto's shuriken throw, all of which embedded themselves in a rock near his opponent. Kakuzu! Shouted Naruto. Shut up. This guy's annoying. I put up with you, do I not? He returned idly, inspecting one of his nails to emphasize his boredom. Naruto growled, the noise evolving into a raspy scream of frustration that began to erupt from the back of his throat. The Iwanin, sensing opportunity, jetted forward with a kunai extended for Naruto's neck. He never made it there. 10 feet away from the blonde, Naruto whipped around and threw forward his right arm, the black tendrils of Jiangu bursting forth and ensnaring the Iwanin. The teenager dropped his kunai as the threads wrapped securely around his wrists, ankles, and throat, completely restricting his movement and holding him aloft. Now what? Glared Naruto at his mentor. Use the power I have granted you to take his heart and make it one with your chakra system. Jiangu will know what to do. The green eyes of Naruto's captive widened at this proclamation, while the blonde merely shrugged. Naruto raised his left arm, allowing the black threads to slither out from the suture there. They shot forward suddenly, burying into the Iwanin's chest and causing him to gag. After a few seconds, the light dimmed from his eyes and the threads emerged, a pulsating something encased in their grasp. The bundle disappeared into Naruto's arm, and the blonde could feel a new power flooding through him. Whoa! Take off your shirt, commanded Kakuzu suddenly. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the abruptness of the order but did as he was told, removing both the vest and shirt he wore. Kakuzu stepped up behind him, holding something up to his back for a matter of seconds before removing his hand. It is done, he intoned. Naruto wished he had a mirror. What's done? He asked, annoyed. I covered up your new acquisition with a mask. I assumed that you would not want blood and organs to go unprotected, he deadpanned, and so took the liberty of getting extra ANBU masks. Jianga took care of the semantics. The blonde turned and stared at the taller ninja, understanding dawning in his eyes. You mean, those last bounties? Do not read into my actions, brat, Kakuzu defended haughtily. I killed those ANBU because they were well worth the cost. The masks just ended up being additional perks. Now come Hozuki's mask still requires a Suiton heart to house. Naruto looked around as Kakuzu came to a halt, the clearing they were currently in quite serene. A waterfall fell gently into a smooth lake, the peaceful feeling in the area relaxing Naruto's nerves. The new power he felt coursing through him had been somewhat overwhelming during the trek out of the land of Earth. If you want me to get a Suiton heart, shouldn't we keep going to Kirigakure? He asked. No, came the blunt response. As I mentioned before, Kirigakure is far away and very difficult to infiltrate. This place will serve two purposes. The blonde looked around, attempting to find something special about the clearing. Stumped, he sighed and bit down his pride. And where exactly is this place? This, Kakuzu presented with mock grandiosity, is the renowned secret entrance to Takigakure. His pupil looked at him in slight disbelief, causing the bounty hunter to rub the bridge of his nose in irritation. There is a reason Takigakure is named as such, brat, he ground out. Naruto eyed the waterfall, his mouth forming an O of understanding. Kakuzu rolled his eyes in frustration, thinking how fortunate it was for Naruto that killing the group of Iwanin had satisfied his homicidal urges. He reached into a sleeve and pulled out a picture, holding it up so Naruto could see. This is Tamura Tadao. He was my contact within the village for information, but he has outlived his usefulness. The blonde studied the picture, noting the man's features just as Kakuzu had told him to long ago. He possessed a slim face with blue hair and sulphurous yellow-green eyes, greediness glinting in their poisonous depths. If he was your contact, why do you want me to kill him? This bastard is trying to blackmail me, growled the former Takinin, and I do not allow such foolishness to go unpunished. He thinks that I will pay him a ridiculous sum of money in order to prevent him from telling the village about my existence and activities. Then why don't you kill him? My presence within my home village would not be an inconspicuous one, he snorted, and I do not believe I could control myself if I returned. There is a reason why there are no witnesses to any bounty hunting trips I take. You would do well to follow the same procedure. I guess I can do you this favor, the blonde acquiesced at last, grinning slyly. Tell me what to do. Naruto surfaced from the pool and gasped for air, immediately regretful of trying to make the mission out to be a bigger deal than it was. That bastard Kakuzu didn't tell me how long I would have to hold my breath for. I'll kill him. He hoisted himself from the water, dragging a briefcase out behind him. Fully out, he shook himself off and looked around. The pool he had come up in was one of several, waterfalls trickling into all of them. Short grass littered the area, and a few trees were growing intermittently some distance away. Naruto placed the briefcase on the grass beside him, unfastening the locks and checking the contents. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the money Kakuzu had received from Zangia was still safe and dry. The blonde had asked his teacher for the briefcase in order to solidify the image of paying the blackmail ransom. Kakuzu had very reluctantly handed over the money, but not after telling him in vivid detail what he would do to the blonde if all the cash wasn't there upon his return. Naruto shuddered. The images were not pleasant. He got to his feet and picked up the briefcase, wandering aimlessly to the right. After 20 minutes of walking, he paused, sharp eyes catching sight of something interesting. Two teenage boys, obviously ninja, were picking on a third kid who looked to be about Naruto's age. They looked to be content with simply verbally abusing the third person until one of the boys shoved the other party. The kid tried countering, but that opened the way for the two boys to start physically beating on him. Suddenly the blonde heard a snicker not far away, and swiveled his head, finally managing to pinpoint an adult hidden carefully within a clump of bushes 100 feet away from the kids. Naruto eyed him carefully, noting blue hair and an angular jaw. That's the one, he thought. Naruto approached the man, clearing his throat to capture his attention. Sulphurous yellow-green eyes turned to face him, wide in surprise. Tamura Tadao? Naruto posed. Who's asking? Replied the man in a reedy whine. His voice grated on Naruto's ears, and the blonde was forced to visibly contain his flinch. Kakuzu sent me, he stated brusquely. I have the money. Ah, good, grinned Tadao. Let me see the briefcase. Naruto placed the briefcase down and unlocked it, turning it around so it opened towards the informant. The man's eyes lit up in excitement, allowing Naruto a moment to focus on the group of fighting children. Only the third kid was left, lying motionless on the ground. Well, it looks like it's all here, said Tadao in his high voice. Naruto heard the click of the briefcase locks as the Takinin closed it, deciding that now was the time to act. Pleasure doing business with. Naruto reached out with his right hand and grabbed the man's throat. Ah, blissful silence, he sighed. His eyes hardened and he brought the man right up to his face in the closest imitation of his teacher that he could muster. Kakuzu sends his regards, he whispered wickedly. Then he thrust his left hand forward, threads bursting forth just like with the Iwanin. Tadao's eyes widened and then glazed over as the threads stole his heart and assimilated it into Naruto's system. He dropped the corpse of the informant as power flooded his body again, causing him to moan. The blonde rubbed his forehead to try and stave off the headache he felt coming. Okay, there should really be a label for side effects on that scroll, he groaned. Suddenly, a kunai was at his throat. Who are you, and why did you kill this man? Demanded a tomboyish voice. Naruto mentally berated himself for dropping his guard. He felt the kunai tickle his skin and realized that he had yet to answer the question. This man was a traitor to your village, he explained, deciding that half-truths might just get him through this. Say you're right, retorted the voice after a short pause. That would imply that you don't even belong to the village. Where's your allegiance? Naruto gulped slightly. He preferred to kill only when necessary, or worthwhile, as far as bounty hunting went, and judging by the voice behind him, his captor was too young to be worth any significant reward. He began to work the black tendrils in his body towards attacking his opponent, waiting for the right moment. I have no village allegiance, he hazarded, stalling in the meantime. The person behind him was silent for a moment, and Naruto figured he or she was mulling over his answer. He stayed perfectly still until he heard his captor groan, the hand with the kunai retracting just a hair. That was enough for him. The blonde quickly threw up his right arm, pushing away the kunai and leaping away in one swift movement. He turned around to see his opponent, a thin, tan child around his age with light green hair, clutching his or her stomach in pain. The kid groaned, and Naruto felt something prickle his conscience. Kakuzu's gonna kill me, he sighed. Are you okay? He tried. Do I look okay? Snapped the kid, the voice, while tomboyish, now distinctly female. Not particularly, shrugged the blonde. Hey, you look familiar, he realized. It took a minute of staring before it finally clicked. Naruto reached into one of his many pockets and pulled out a battered photo. He held it up next to the girl and ordered her to lift her head up. She looked up so Naruto could see her face, and he gasped when he saw a black bruise painted around one of her orange eyes. You're the Jinchuriki. Fu, right? Another moment then, hey, you were the one being picked on earlier. Your powers of deduction are astounding, she grit out. How do you know I'm a Jinchuriki? Naruto nudged the body of Tadao. He was an informant for my mentor, he finished after a pause. Why were those kids picking on you? Fu scoffed. You wouldn't understand. The blonde was silent for a long time. At length, he spoke in a solemn voice. They think you're a monster. They blame you for the deaths the Biju inside of you caused. You're the target of all of their pent-up rage and hatred. Worst of all, you can't defend yourself, because then people think that you're attacking them. Am I close? All Fu could do was stare at him in wonder. How? Do I know? He finished rhetorically. He looked down quietly in shame, as if debating what to say. I know because I'm just like you. I am the host of the QB. Fu was too stunned to speak. Naruto watched as her eyes seemed to go blank for several seconds. After a moment, they seemed to refocus, and she removed her hand from her stomach, where it had been resting to quell the pain. You're telling the truth, she whispered in awe. I never thought I'd meet another person like me, someone who shares my pain and understands. You believe me, just like that? He questioned skeptically. She smiled wryly. I spoke to the bug. At Naruto's inquiring gaze, she elaborated, Nanabai no Kabutamushi. Apparently he was reacting to the presence of the QB, and that's why I was in pain. He wasn't quite sure how to respond to that. Then, suddenly, an idea occurred to him. Are you accepted in this village? Not really, she replied. Why? No real reason, he shrugged carelessly. But if you're looking for acceptance, I think I know a place where you can find it. Interested? Kakuzu strode, he never paced, back and forth in the clearing his blonde pupil had left well over an hour ago. It wasn't that he was worried about him, but the idiot did have his money. Tadao shouldn't have proven to be such a big problem, but if Naruto had gotten caught, even a platoon of elite Takinin, as few as they were, might have been able to overwhelm him with his limited experience. That brat has 5 minutes before I go in there and take off his head for losing my money. Fortunately, Kakuzu didn't have to wait that long. After 3 minutes, bubbles began to form in the middle of the water, attracting his attention. Moments after, Naruto's blonde head burst through the surface, followed by several deep gasps of air. Brat, growled Kakuzu, where is my money? The black briefcase containing Kakuzu's cash flew through the air and landed on the bank next to the tall man. Good, he stated after checking the contents. Now hurry up. I do not wish to dally here any longer than necessary. That was when a second head burst through the water, also taking in gulps of air. Kakuzu immediately began preparing a powerful technique to take care of the intruder, but Naruto's spluttered wait caused Kakuzu to pause in curiosity. He waited until Naruto and the other person swam to shore and flopped onto the bank, chests heaving in rhythm. Kakuzu's green eyes stared with piercing intensity at the other person before switching their gaze purely to his pupil. You little shit, he hissed, what did you do? Naruto coughed up a lumful of water before answering. I took out your guy and brought back Takigaku's third best secret, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabai. Aren't you proud? He smirked. Kakuzu hauled the blonde up by his collar, bringing him within inches of his face and leaking powerful killer intent. What was your intention by bringing this pest out with you? I thought that maybe you could help train her like you kinda did with me? Do not presume to speak for me, you insolent pest, snarled the mercenary. You were the first student I have ever taken on, and until you have earned your keep, I will consider even that a mistake. I will not allow you to drag me into training another useless, annoying sack of flesh. Before Naruto could protest, Fu's voice cut through Kakuzu's rant. You never told me that Kakuzu was your teacher, Naruto. Her voice was a mixture of fear and awe, and Kakuzu dropped Naruto carelessly onto the grass before walking over to her. The bounty hunter leaned in close, appearing to inspect her before saying in a dangerously low tone, What have you heard of me, little girl? Only what the history books have told us, shrugged Fu. That after becoming a great ninja and then failing to assassinate the Shodai Hokage, you betrayed the village, but not before stealing Jiangu and the heart of some guy. Dunno, that part was pretty vague. But you're an inspiration to me. Kakuzu raised one eyebrow. Most people do not have such a reaction to my deeds and actions. My name's Fu, and I hate Taki as much as I think you do. Naruto gave me something to believe in, where before I only experienced pain and misery. She removed her hideate from where it was wrapped around her arm and scored it with a kunai, symbolizing the end of her village affiliation. Will you take me on as a second apprentice, Kakuzu-sensei? Kakuzu punched her head, but was surprised when the Fu in front of him burst into a cloud of dust. Interesting trick, he called aloud to the surrounding foliage. It's part of my Biju's abilities, returned Fu's voice. Pretty cool, huh? The green-haired girl jumped down from a tree, landing not too far from Kakuzu. So, am I enough of an asset for you to train now? The tall ninja looked at her for a long moment, considering the request. At length, he turned away, picked up the briefcase, and walked on. Do not call me sensei, was all he said. Naruto had to admit that while Kakuzu was interesting to hang out with, having Fu around was a blessing. It was great to finally be able to have someone his own age to hang out with, even if the past 3 months since Fu's arrival had been somewhat busy. While Naruto had been adjusting to the random power surges of the new Suiton and Doton chakras within him, Kakuzu had drilled Fu on all of her abilities. Unlike Naruto, who seemed to have been granted limitless chakra and elevated healing abilities, Fu's main ability allowed her to utilize the Jinton element, what she called dust release, a combination of wind and earth elements. Currently, both Naruto and Fu were waiting for Kakuzu in their usual training field on the outskirts of Onanji. Naruto eyed Fu using his peripheral vision, taking notice of her outfit change. She wore a short fishnet shirt under a slightly shorter white shirt, which revealed her abdomen. White armlets covered her arms up to just past her elbows, and white ninja shoes protected her feet. A white skirt covered more fishnet material which went down to mid-thigh, and Fu's scored waterfall forehead protector was in place on her right bicep. An empty, red cylindrical bag hung on her back, held in place by crisscrossing red straps over her chest. Risque, he thought offhandedly. Kakuzu's curt greeting of brat, fu, cut off his thoughts. How come you don't have a derogatory name for her? Pouted Naruto. She has respect for me, he replied blandly, and she does not annoy the shit out of me like you do. Naruto huffed indignantly, causing Fu to giggle lightly. As for the real reason I am here, continued Kakuzu, close your eyes and hold out your hands, brat. Naruto did as he was told, and seconds later he heard Fu gasp. He felt a brief sense of excitement before there was a swishing sound and Naruto lost the feeling in his right arm. He opened his eyes to find the black threads of Jiangu reconnecting his now severed right arm at the same junction it had done a year ago with his left one. This is becoming a habit with you, Naruto told Kakuzu in a voice unfazed by his lack of appendage. True, droned his teacher, but I wanted to demonstrate to you the capabilities of your new weapon. Naruto's eyes found what the tall ninja was referring to, a wakizashi with a 12-inch glistening steel blade connected to a plain black handle. Whoa, he murmured, reaching out with both hands as his right arm finished reattaching to his body. You got this for me? He choked out. For fuck's sake, do not get all emotional on me, Kakuzu chastised. This will expand your thus far limited repertoire and aid in your wind chakra manipulation. I expect you to pay me back for that in the years to come. So are you gonna teach me how to use it? Naruto asked, voice filled with awe as he sheathed and unsheathed the weapon over and over again. No, scoffed the bounty hunter, I have little use for such trivialities. So while I train your new friend here, you will serve under a kenjutsu master I managed to find for you. As Naruto quirked an eyebrow in curiosity, Kakuzu motioned towards the forest where two figures in black cloaks were appearing. The shorter of the two possessed raven black hair and blank crimson eyes, his face betraying no emotion whatsoever. The taller one rivaled Kakuzu's height, and carried a tremendous object wrapped in white bandages on his back. Naruto could only surmise that this man was to be his new teacher. Does he have blue skin? Wondered the blonde as they got closer. He also noted slits in the man's neck, gills, and beady, bloodshot eyes that shone with a sadism which probably surpassed Kakuzu's own. This is Hoshigaki Kisame, one of the former 7 shinobi swordsmen of the mist, Kakuzu introduced without emotion. He will train you for the next year using whatever methods he so desires. Kisame grinned at this, revealing row upon row of sharp teeth. Naruto gulped slightly, but otherwise made no other move which revealed his emotions. We're gonna have a good time, aren't we, fishbait? Chuckled Kisame. Naruto shot a scowl at Kakuzu, who completely ignored it, before following Kisame and the other man away from Onanji and northeast towards the land of lightning. Fu waved a rather tepid farewell before following Kakuzu in the opposite direction to continue her training. Both Jinchuriki had a long year ahead of them. Omake. Kakuzu wandered down the practically deserted street, Fu walking in front of him and gazing at the buildings in wonder. While he recognized that Naruto would start training with Kisame tomorrow and Fu needed a legitimate ninja uniform, he wasn't particularly happy about going out and spending more money on his wayward pupils. The bounty hunter was shaken from his musings by the sound of a bell chiming. He looked up to find Fu disappearing through the door of the same ninja supply shop he had visited years before. He gave a long-suffering sigh that betrayed his annoyance before waiting idly outside, a silent sentinel. 20 minutes later, the Seven-Tails Jinchuriki reappeared dressed in the most ridiculous outfit Kakuzu had ever seen. While fishnet could be considered a staple of ninja attire, I fail to see the practicality of such stupid clothing choices, he criticized. It helps show off my girlish figure, Fu chirped. What figure? You have the body of a 12-year-old, he deadpanned. I am a 12-year-old, she huffed indignantly. Besides, I like it. These clothes allow me flexibility and room to grow into, so someday I can use my figure. Let us assume for a moment that all of that is true, allowed the tall ninja. What possible purpose does that serve? He pointed to the red, cylindrical object strapped to her back. No idea, she said, but it looks cool. Noticing the vein throbbing in Kakuzu's forehead, Fu smiled sheepishly and added, I'll find a use for it at some point. There was silence for a long moment as Kakuzu fought down the urge to kill the girl. I expect a full reimbursement, with interest, he threatened before walking away. Fu merely pumped her arm in excitement at having won the right to keep her new clothes. Suetun, Suikoden no Jutsu. Naruto quickly stopped channeling chakra to his feet, allowing his body to plummet below the surface of the lake. The water shark bomb sailed harmlessly overhead, splashing mere feet away from where he had been standing. He mentally congratulated himself for his quick thinking, swimming quietly towards where Kisame was standing in the vain hope that the blue-haired man wouldn't know his location. The blonde Jinchuriki had been training on and off with the former Kirin for roughly a year, the lessons stopping due to changing locations based on the missions Kisame and his partner had to go on. With those exceptions, they had stayed around an independent part of the land of hot water which called itself the Land of the Sea, a stretch of rural country between the lands of fire and lightning which bordered the ocean and dabbled in fishing. The area consisted of a large lake which sat in the middle of a dense, foggy forest. Judging by how well it was hidden and how well Kisame knew the area, Naruto could only assume that he often frequented the area for his own training. The nice thing about having Kisame as a teacher was that Naruto had learned more than just swordsmanship from the man. He had left Kakuzu before being able to take full advantage of the new elements surging within him. Fortunately, ex-Miss Shinobi Kisame had taught Naruto a bunch of common Suiton moves that most Kirigakure Chunin knew, as well as the basis of some of the more difficult ones. It was, at the very least, more than Kakuzu had ever taught him in one sitting. As the year had passed, Naruto had noticed that he kept comparing Kisame to Kakuzu. While Kakuzu was ruthless, obsessed with money, and normally wouldn't do anything unless it benefited him in some way, Kisame was a strict taskmaster, forcing Naruto through motions again and again until he had perfected them. Comparatively, Kakuzu usually taught Naruto the bare minimum of what he felt the blonde needed to know, and then left him to his own devices. Barring the obvious sadistic streak and bloodlust, there were very few similarities between the two giants. Besides teaching, the most useful contrast between the two was that Kisame was far more willing to talk than Kakuzu. So willing, in fact, that Naruto could swear planting him with the blue-skinned man had been part of Kakuzu's plan all along. That bastard would somehow find a way to make a gain by getting rid of me. Apparently, the black cloaks with red clouds that Kisame and his partner wore symbolized their affiliation with Akatsuki, an organization that Kisame described as being dedicated to world domination. The group was still somewhat new, having formed shortly before his birth, but it had already earned a reputation as an effective terrorist organization. According to Kisame, Akatsuki was currently focusing on attaining large sums of money in order to back their plan, which explained its interest in Kakuzu. The group operated in pairs, and Naruto found himself hard-pressed to find a stranger partnership than the one he was currently enmeshed in. Kisame's comrade was a stoic man by the name of Uchiha Itachi, the surname ringing a familiar bell with the blonde. It had taken a solid 2 weeks for Naruto to find out that information, the raven-haired man silent until Kisame had ribbed him into finally introducing himself. Naruto was constantly wary of Itachi. The Uchiha clan had taken no great strides in attempting to improve his former life in Konoha, and while he didn't know Itachi personally, he wasn't taking any chances. Additionally, while the Uchiha was an obvious missing nin from their home village, Naruto wasn't sure exactly what Itachi knew of him, if anything. Fortunately, the raven-haired man, while apparently in charge of the larger and more intimidating Kisame, had done little to nothing to interfere with or stop Naruto's training. Not that Itachi not interfering with his training made it any easier. Naruto swam up from beneath Kisame, mentally thanking the man for training him how to hold his breath for long periods of time. He stealthily began to rise to the surface, closing in on 20 feet away when his teacher looked down and grinned wickedly. The blonde had seen that look many times on the former Kirinin in the past year and had learned that the amount of sharp, glistening teeth that could be seen in his mouth was a good indication of how much trouble he was in. Even from his current distance, Naruto felt like he could almost count each individual tooth. Ah shit! Kisame clapped his hands together, and then placed his right one on the surface of the lake. Suiton Gasho Kazame. From each of his fingers came a shark made entirely of water, all of them swirling down through the lake and targeting the blonde. Naruto yelped in surprise, but only managed to release a stream of bubbles that the sharks promptly tore through. Thinking quickly, he formed 3 hand seals and began to rotate in place. Mizu no Tatsumaki, he thought. A swirling vortex of water formed around him, serving as protection and partially destroying all 5 sharks. He stopped spinning after several seconds and mentally sighed in relief. Okay, one obstacle avoided. Naruto looked up to see Kisame's grin grow wider. How is that possible? Before re-examining his surroundings, the sharks that he thought he had destroyed began to reform before his eyes, the water from the lake filling in the parts that his technique had destroyed. 1, he counted 2, 3, 4, wait, where's the 5th? He turned around just in time to find the last shark bearing down upon him, and resisted the urge to yelp in panic. Stretching out his arms and legs, Naruto caught the shark's wide jaws as it attempted to snatch him up. It thrashed violently, trying to shake the blonde off to attack him properly, but Naruto held on tight. Frustrated, the shark raced to the surface, breaking through the glass-like top of the lake at a breakneck speed. Fortunately for Naruto, the shark lost cohesion as soon as it lost contact with the water. Unfortunately for him, the momentum from the shark continued to propel him through the air. Oh! He screamed as he flew in an arc over the lake and towards the shore. He hit the ground clumsily, rolling head over feet before springing up with his wakizashi raised defensively. The large, bandaged weapon that Kisame affectionately called Samahata connected with Naruto's blade, forcing the blonde to dig his heels into the ground to keep his balance. Even so, the power behind the attack moved him back a solid foot. Naruto wasn't entirely sure why the blade had a name, but after fighting against it for the better part of a year, he wasn't about to question Kisame's methods, especially considering that he had yet to win against it. All he knew was that letting the bandaged weapon touch him was a bad idea. It stole his chakra and caused an annoying burning sensation that lasted for a while. Gotta gain leverage, Naruto sweated as Kisame applied more pressure to his weapon. Kihihi, laughed Kisame, it's over, fishbait. Naruto raised one eyebrow and opened his mouth to respond, but found himself, once again, surrounded by water, a strange sphere of the liquid that was levitating above the ground. Suiro no Jutsu, commented the Akatsuki member. You're completely immobilized. Forfeit or I can take off a leg, he offered hopefully. Fine, grunted the blonde, you win. The water surrounding him collapsed suddenly, allowing him to fall to the earth, chest heaving slightly. Naruto craned his head and caught sight of a second Kisame behind him, which promptly collapsed into water. Damn, he thought. He heard a heavy footfall in front of him and looked up to see Kisame standing there, Samahata once again strapped to the man's back by its leather harness. You did better than I thought you would, fishbait, Kisame told him. You're no master of either Suiton or Kenjutsu, but you have enough skill to get by for now. Naruto grumbled half-heartedly, frustrated that he hadn't gotten closer to beating the giant sword wielder. The year is over, your training is done, spoke a bland voice from the trees. Both ninja looked over to see Itachi standing in front of a sturdy oak, his expression blank. Kakuzu is about a 4-hour walk in that direction, he pointed. Kisame, we have a mission. Let's go. Sure thing, Itachi. See you round, fishbait. Maybe next time you'll have a chance at beating me. Kisame flashed one of his patented smirks at Naruto before following Itachi in the opposite direction the X-Leaf Nin had pointed. Naruto waved a hand in farewell, mildly confused at the abrupt exit, then headed to where Kakuzu was waiting for him. If there was one thing that Naruto would grant Itachi, it was that the man was accurate to a fault. It took just over 4 hours to find Kakuzu and Fu waiting in a rather large clearing with a small pond nearby. Brat, Kakuzu greeted as Fu waved, I trust that your training went well. Fine, he replied quickly, trying hard not to compare Kisame's and Kakuzu's sadism. How was yours? He asked reflexively. Fruitful. It is amazing what one can accomplish when one has a competent student. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the tall ninja but chose not to rise to the bait. Did you get any other information? I knew it. The only reason you got Kisame to train me was to gather information on Akatsuki, he accused. It was not the only reason. I also wanted to get rid of you for a time. Naruto fought the urge to punch his first teacher in the face while Fu tried her hardest not to laugh. I ask again, what did you learn? Naruto told Kakuzu all of the information that he had gathered from Kisame about Akatsuki. The former Takinin digested it all with an unchanging expression, waiting until the blonde was done talking before humming in thought. While not overly useful, at least you managed to figure out something, Kakuzu admitted. As a result, I will allow you an opportunity to claim a reward. How unusually gracious of you, Naruto deadpanned. What's the reward, Kakuzu? Fu asked. This year, the biannual Chunin exams are being held in Konohagakure, Kakuzu explained. They are open to all allied countries, meaning that ninja from AIM, Taki, Kusa, and Suna will be there competing against Konoha. If you truly want revenge against Konoha's populace for its treatment of you, the Chunin exams will be your best opportunity to infiltrate the village and decide how to do so. You'd be willing to enter me in the Chunin exams, just to help me get vengeance? You and Fu, corrected the bounty hunter. Naruto cheered and Fu gave him a quick hug in celebration, but Kakuzu interrupted by clearing his throat. However, you have to defeat me first. Say what? 2-on-1, Kakuzu explained. If you can kill me just once, I will assist you in entering the Chunin exams. If not, we will find some pricey shinobi to kill, reap the bounties, and you can eventually find your own way to get revenge, should you so desire. Okay, so when do we start? Fu asked. Now, stated the taller ninja, detaching both fists from his wrists, and allowing Jiangu's tendrils to carrying them towards his students. Fu rolled to the right to avoid Kakuzu's left hand, while Naruto, shorter than the girl, bent backwards to avoid the other one. The blonde grunted as he fell on his rear, Fu charging in to attack Kakuzu. She threw a hasty punch that Kakuzu maneuvered around, spinning in almost slow motion and delivering a powerful roundhouse kick to her back. Fu skidded head over feet along the ground, grinding to a halt a short distance away from where Naruto was currently seated. Comfortable? He offered. Fu coughed once, spitting to the side and rising to her feet. Very, she retorted sarcastically. Naruto grinned in response, waiting until Fu's eyes met his own before exchanging nods with her. The unspoken message was simple: both would distract their teacher and take advantage of any opening the other could garner. Fu darted around in a semicircle, stopping 50 feet behind Kakuzu. Naruto rose to his feet and settled into a fighting stance, prompting Kakuzu to raise an eyebrow. For 3 seconds, only the wind rustling through the foliage made any motion. Finally, Kakuzu turned around to face Fu instead of Naruto, an action which raised the blonde boy's ire. What, suddenly she's more important than I am? That bastard, I'll show him. He charged his teacher, Fu following suit shortly thereafter. 5 feet away from Kakuzu, Naruto suddenly stopped and then fell flat on his face. I see Kisame did not beat your impetuousness out of you. Your pride will be your undoing one day, criticized Kakuzu as Fu closed in on him. Naruto looked at his feet, blue eyes widening in surprise at the black tendrils wrapped around them. He quickly followed the trail to where the tendrils disappeared into the bottom of his teacher's cloak. That's resourceful. I wonder how long that took to master? Naruto didn't have long to wonder. Fu arrived on the scene, throwing another, harder punch at Kakuzu, who, unable to dodge, caught it. As the girl reared her other hand back, the black threads holding Naruto lifted from the ground, spinning him around and slinging him in the direction of the pond. Not again, he complained, creating a large splash as he hit the water and sank deep. Meanwhile, Kakuzu had caught Fu's second punch and the two were locked in a struggle of strength that the older ninja was winning. Too weak, thought Fu, sweating in exertion as the older Nukenin pushed her backwards, the black tendrils of Jiangsu wriggling around her like snakes. Then, struck by inspiration, she used Kakuzu's grip to flip her body, landing both feet in a solid connection with the underside of Kakuzu's chin. His head snapped back, and the Nanabai Jinchuriki took advantage of the broken deadlock by backflipping away and rotating the pain from her wrists. Clever, complimented Kakuzu, rolling his neck back into its proper position. But how will you follow it up? Like this, shouted a different voice. Suetun, Baku Sui Shoha. A medium-sized wave of water rose from the lake, Naruto riding its peak as he directed it towards Kakuzu, Fu backpedaling swiftly and finding purchase among some tree branches. Ha! Panted Naruto. Take this, he cried as the wave broke over his teacher. After half a minute, the water settled into a relatively small area, only a couple inches deep. Fu abandoned the tree she was in, applying chakra to stand on top of the water like Naruto was doing far across from her. Too much for yet, Kakuzu? Taunted Naruto, his irritation at his teacher granting him cockiness. Arrogance must be earned, brat. You overestimate your power, replied the bounty hunter, rising slowly from his crouch between the two Jinchuriki. I see that Kisame taught you more than mere swordsmanship. However, he continued, reaching his full 6-foot height, do not presume to defeat a former Suetun expert with his own weapon. Naruto, currently facing the former Takinin, scrunched his face in disgust and pointed at Kakuzu. He whined childishly, what the hell happened to your face? Kakuzu's eyes darted momentarily to the water, and after noticing a scrap of black fabric floating away, reached up with one hand to feel his head covering. The triangular piece that normally covered his mouth and nose was missing, revealing his full face to Naruto for the first time. The bridge of Kakuzu's nose looked permanently aged, a crease right below where the mask normally covered. Naruto was briefly reminded of Itachi and the distinctive, premature stress lines he possessed just below his eyes. However, the truly disturbing part about Kakuzu was his mouth, over half of which was essentially stitched shut. From what he could see, 3 loops of thread kept the former Takinin's mouth sewed closed on either side. Is that a side effect of Jiangsu? Naruto posed hesitantly. Kakuzu reached down and picked up the fabric, reattaching it to the white head covering and glaring daggers at the blonde. Nothing comes without a price, he stated at last, something I am sure I have taught you already. And everybody ages, something which I thought I would not have to teach you. His piece said. Kakuzu's fist shot forward with lightning quickness, nailing Naruto in the sternum and belly before he could react. The older ninja's hands sunk in a little deeper before Naruto turned into water. He anticipated my move. Perhaps the brat has learned something after all. I see that Kisame also taught you how to perform Mizubunshin, Kakuzu called to the air. That is good, it is a very useful technique, provided you have the water to use it. Kisame-senpai did a really good job with my training, affirmed Naruto, rising from the pond. Granted, I need water to use the Bakusui Shoha and he doesn't, and mine definitely isn't as powerful as his, but he did open up my moveset a little bit. Now let's continue, he said, settling into an offensive stance again. Kakuzu nodded in recognition, but before he could move, he found a spike of earth protruding from his chest. Sorry, Kakuzu, commented Fu, a foot-long piece of earth formed around her hand, but it looks like we win. Nice job distracting him, Naruto. Not quite, Kakuzu told her, a steely glint in his eyes. Just like Naruto had, he dissolved into water, but instead of completely collapsing, the liquid flowed around and over Fu, encasing her in a bubble held in place by the Mizu Bunshin. Ah crap, complained Naruto, recognizing the water prison technique his battling partner was now trapped in. He reached behind and placed one hand cautiously on the handle of his sword before gazing around intently, wary of his teacher. Where are you? He sing-songed nervously. That was when a hand reached up through the earth and grabbed Naruto's leg, surprising him. Ah! He cried as he was forcibly pulled into the ground up to his shoulders. Kakuzu rose smoothly from the earth, grabbed the wakizashi from its sheath on Naruto's back, and fluidly moved it next to Naruto's throat. Yield, he commanded. Naruto growled in frustration but acquiesced to defeat for the second time that day. The water clone holding Fu collapsed, dropping the girl to the ground on hands and knees. Kakuzu brushed minuscule specks of dirt from his shoulders as he manipulated the earth around Naruto by channeling chakra through his feet. The blonde pulled free seconds later, hauling himself out of the ground and irritably swiping his weapon from the bounty hunter. I didn't even get to pull off my best moves, he pouted. Such a shame, drawled Kakuzu sarcastically. Fu walked over and patted Naruto's shoulder sympathetically. I am sure your potential must far surpass what you displayed, he continued in the same dry tone, clearly mocking his student. Hell yeah! What exactly was the purpose of that exercise? Asked Fu. Did you really think we would win, or were you just trying to prove a point? The latter. I wanted to make sure there were no misconceptions about the difference between our power levels, even in a 2-on-1 fight. Also, I felt that the brat needed to relearn respect, just to unlearn any bad habits Kisame may have taught him. Now come, you lost, and we have money to make. Actually, Kakuzu-san, I'd like to interrupt your plans. Naruto and Fu's heads snapped around in surprise, a direct contrast to Kakuzu's slow and purposeful turn. Standing under the shade of a copse of trees was a strange woman wearing a black cloak with red clouds, some sort of white flower stuck in her blue hair. Naruto, apparently mesmerized by the stud stuck underneath the woman's lower lip, leaned into Kakuzu without averting his eyes and whispered, Who's she? I do not know, admitted the other man, but staring like an idiot does not seem to be getting you anywhere. I was once told by a man named Zetsu, Kakuzu stated a little louder, that anybody wearing that outfit is a member of Akatsuki. That is correct, confirmed the woman. My name is Konan, and I'm the second in command of the organization. Might I have a word with you privately? Kakuzu nodded and took a step forward, pausing momentarily to throw over his shoulder, Listen in and I will kill you. The two Jinchuriki jumped slightly, but quickly nodded in understanding. What do you want? He demanded upon reaching Konan. We, she emphasized, would like you to reconsider your offer to go to the Chunin exams. The former Takinin's eyes narrowed suspiciously. How long were you spying on us? Long enough, began Konan, to know that your students have great potential and that you are the best option we have to complete our plans. While your concern for me and my students is touching, he drawled cynically, I am not in the habit of breaking my word, and as the brats did not beat me, we are not going to Konoha, he finished firmly. Kakuzu turned around and prepared to walk away, but was stopped by what Konan's next words. We know you are in possession of the Nanabai. The older ninja refocused his attention upon the blue-haired woman, silently prompting her to continue. We could easily remove her from your presence, if we so desired. Even you could not stand against so many other S-class shinobi. I will hear you out. Thank you, Konan bowed. You have heard of Orochimaru? Orochimaru, renowned as the Snake Sannin of Konoha and one of its most infamous traitors. Few people have not heard of him, he snorted derisively. Why? We want you to kill him. Kakuzu raised an eyebrow at this statement. While not entirely outside the realm of possibility, the fight would be a difficult one, Kakuzu conceded. Tell me why. 13 years ago, Orochimaru joined Akatsuki after defecting from Konoha, Konan explained. When Uchiha Itachi joined 7 years later, Orochimaru attempted to steal his body, but ended up failing. He was forced to flee the organization, taking his ring with him. His ring? Kakuzu interrupted. The rings are the most important symbol of a person's affiliation with Akatsuki, she told him, flashing her own ring in the process. However, that's merely one reason we want him gone. Orochimaru's current plans involve the 12-year-old container of the Ichibi. The Ichibi, and from what Zetsu has told me, that would interfere with your plans. I can only assume that this container will be present at the Chunin exams, Kakuzu extrapolated. Konan nodded. From the intelligence we've been able to gather thus far, he plans on using the powers of the Jinchuriki to invade Konoha and take vengeance upon the village by destroying it. A universal plan, it seems, muttered the bounty hunter. And if I refuse to cooperate? Conan's eyes darted to where Fu and Naruto were standing. We'll take her and extract the Biju, killing her in the process. Kakuzu seemed to consider it for a moment, prompting Conan to finish her offer. We're also allowing you to keep the money his head is worth. Done, agreed Kakuzu without hesitation. That is too large a sum of money to pass up simply because of principle. However, the brats will need a third teammate. If you would like my services, you will need to provide a competent and obedient person who can serve as one. Conan remained silent for a long moment, her eyes appearing slightly unfocused. Very well, she conceded at length, returning her attention to Kakuzu. Your last student will be waiting for you at one of our hideouts within the Land of Fire, near the border with the Land of Rice Paddies. We appreciate your cooperation, Kakuzu-san. Her piece said. Conan's figure appeared to ripple, breaking apart into hundreds of pieces of paper to be carried away by the wind. Kakuzu watched her disappear in silence. The shinobi of Akatsuki have very unique abilities. I would fit in quite easily and would also do well to remain on their good side. Even with my skill, working against them would be hindering. He walked over to his students, who were currently engaged in a rock-paper-scissors battle, and kicked both of them. Get up, he commanded. It appears that you will get your wish after all. What do you mean? Asked Fu, standing up alongside Naruto. The tall ninja sighed wearily. Despite my desire to the contrary, we are headed to Konoha. Really? Naruto exclaimed, excitement visibly pulsing throughout his body. Even though we lost to you? What did that lady say? What have I told you about looking a gift horse in the mouth, brat? Kakuzu snapped. For now, simply accept your stroke of good fortune. Let us depart. We must pick up your wayward third teammate to be eligible for the Chunin exams. Another headache to look forward to, he grumbled. As Kakuzu led Naruto and Fu west toward the Land of Rice Paddies, the two Jinchuriki high-fived in victory, discussing in quiet tones the upcoming Chunin exams. A large quantity of paper fluttered into the center of a large forest in the southeastern part of the Land of Fire. They came together to reveal Conan, looking no worse for wear despite the strange method of travel. She held her ring, which displayed the character Byako, up to a sturdy tree, unveiling a white sheet of paper that was only one part of a complex sealing technique meant to ward off interlopers. The blue-haired woman walked straight into the tree, causing it to ripple slightly, and descended down a stairwell into a humongous open cavern. The cavern was void of all but two objects, one of which was near the back. A massive stone statue stood there, the top of which came only a couple 100 feet shy of hitting the ceiling. Spikes jutted out from behind the face, which possessed 9 eyes, 2 rows of 4 with a giant one in the middle to make the face symmetrical, all of which were closed. A stone scroll with a chain running through it was held by the statue's mouth, and 2 large hands, handcuffed together, jutted up from the ground, coming to about the statue's chin. The other figure was, surprisingly enough, even more imposing than the statue, a man of average build with spiky orange hair and the traditional cloak of Akatsuki. He turned around upon hearing footfalls, his ringed gray eyes, a series of concentric circles, boring holes into the new arrival. Kakuzu accepted the terms we set forth, stated Conan. Receiving no acknowledgement that she was heard, she continued, What are our plans, Pain? The gray-eyed man remained completely silent, but despite his unnerving stare and emotionless facade, Conan waited patiently for an answer. Kakuzu has agreed to take care of Orochimaru, Pain remarked at length, who has been a thorn in our side for far too long. Even if he has never acted directly against us, his defection and plans have stalled us unnecessarily. I still don't understand why we didn't just take him out when we had the chance, Conan pointed out. Pain blinked slowly, the only motion he made in response to his companion's query. Orochimaru is clever and resourceful. He has contacts in most of the countries the world over, and knows how to stay under the radar and manipulate the underground. Until now, we have been spread too thin to dedicate resources to attack him, but with Setsu's most recent information, we can finally begin our real plans, finished Conan. The Biju. Conan's partner nodded once. Correct. Zetsu and Sasori have managed to piece together enough information to deduce that Orochimaru plans on using Ichibi no Shikaku to destroy Konohagakure during the third portion of the Chunin exams. I know, Conan intoned impatiently. You made sure that I knew at least that much to get Kakuzu on board. However, what Orochimaru doesn't know is that we will also be there, Pain told her. And we will capitalize on his upcoming failure. The blue-haired woman nodded in understanding. And the girl? I can only assume you are referring to the Jinchuriki of the Nanabai no Kabutamushi, Pain guessed. At Conan's confirming nod, he continued, For now, we leave her. Kakuzu is a valuable asset, and we would do well to not endanger our current partnership with him by overextending our reach. What was his relationship with the children? Conan's eyes adopted a faraway look, trying to recall her conversation with Kakuzu. I don't know the man well enough to make an accurate judgment. He might care enough to pose an obstacle when we target the Nanabai, but if there's more incentive for him in her death, he would probably go along with the plan. Then we leave her alone, Payne repeated, along with the boy. Conan arched one perfectly thin eyebrow in confusion. The boy, you mean the blonde child with him? Payne turned around, eyeing all 9 closed eyes of the giant statue. Yes. Or, if you'd prefer, the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko, the most powerful of the Biju. The woman's eyes widened by a fraction. What? When did you find this out? Itachi informed me earlier today when I assigned him and Kisame their newest mission, Payne explained. Since the Kyubi needs to be sealed last anyway, it would appear to be doubly beneficial to keep Kakuzu near us as much as possible, especially following the Chunin exams. Keeping track of the 2 Jinchuriki will be much easier with their teacher close at hand and their power already in our clutches. So we wait until the right time then, concluded Conan. Yes. Soon enough, our plans will begin in earnest. The orange-haired man stared at the second eye from the left on the top row of eyes. 1 down, 8 to go. Then, the world shall finally know peace through true pain. Ah, Kakuzu-san, a pleasure to see you again. Naruto and Fu both jumped as the strangest person they had ever seen emerged from a tree. His face and upper body were 2 colors, half black, half white, and he possessed yellow eyes, one of them pupilless, along with light green hair. A large Venus flytrap engulfed and protected his head, making him seem more plant than human, especially with what little they could see of him. Naruto was still fixated on the fact that this person had just morphed out from a tree. On the other hand, Kakuzu appeared to be completely unfazed. Zetsu, he greeted in a monotone, how unsurprising to run into you here. Zetsu merely stared at the tall ninja unblinkingly. With just under a week before the Chunin exams began, Kakuzu and his pupils had taken their time traveling the relatively short distance from their training spot to the land of rice paddies. The 7-hour trek had led them past the Valley of the End, the last battlefield between Konoha co-founders Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Naruto and Fu were in awe at the sight of the awesome statues and roaring falls. Kakuzu had remained oppressively silent, and Naruto thought that perhaps the bounty hunter had scowled at the Senju statue as they passed. About 10 miles away from the Valley of the End, the strange man whom Kakuzu referred to as Zetsu had popped out of a tree. As Kakuzu and Zetsu engaged in conversation, both kids were shocked to realize that the newcomer had 2 personalities. Apparently Kakuzu had already become acquainted with this trait of the Akatsuki member, for he seemed to be unalarmed by the contradicting voices. How have you been, Kakuzu-san? Implored White Zetsu politely. Do not engage him, snarled Black Zetsu, we are here for one purpose only, at the command of Leader Sama. That seems to be the general trend of things, Kakuzu commented dryly. Leader Sama is a man worthy of respect, Zetsu informed him, but enough of this idle chit-chat. We have other places to be. Come, we'll show you to your target. Zetsu unmerged completely from the tree, walking towards a rather large rock embedded in the ground. 3 sets of eyes followed him. The Akatsuki member held forth his right hand, and Kakuzu briefly saw the glint of a ring, positioned on a different finger than the one Conan had flashed him. The rock in front of the plant man slid slowly to the side, revealing a man-sized hole in the ground. Kakuzu could only conclude that the rings allowed members access to hideouts that were otherwise off-limits to lower minions. Your requested 3rd teammate is waiting in there, Zetsu said, and Naruto almost thought that he sounded snippy. We have other errands to run. Be nice, warned Zetsu's white side, Haro is a good boy, treat him well. With that, the plant man disappeared into the ground, 2/3 of his audience wide-eyed at the ability. The trio descended into the hole, the rock moving back into place to conceal the opening once Kakuzu's head cleared. Dim lamps hanging from the walls illuminated the short staircase that opened into a larger chamber, a circular area about 500 feet in diameter. Naruto was surprised to see the sheer amount of supplies that had been stored within the cavern. Ninja attire from multiple villages hung in neat rows along the walls. The blonde could easily pinpoint the standard Chunin and Jonin flak jackets, as well as A and BU armor, of both the Cloud and Leaf, with a massive surplus of the latter. Outfits from the Hidden Rain and Waterfall, while not as plentiful, could still be spotted interspersed between the 2 great nations, along with some strange attire with notable black and gray camouflage patterns. Hanging next to each village's clothing were rows of Hydeate, the one next to the unfamiliar clothing bearing a musical note. Naruto moved closer, deciding he wanted a closer look at the objects of the unknown village. Meanwhile, Fu had stepped in the opposite direction and had begun to admire the stock of weapons. Crates of kunai and shurikens sat against the wall, along with several smaller boxes of paper bombs. Spools of ninja wire and stacks of saban, the sharp, needle-like tools used mostly by medical ninja, lay in neat piles nearby. Multiple umbrellas, a weapon commonly affiliated with Amigekyo ninja, hung by their handles from hooks protruding from the wall. Also littering the wall were other weapons. Fu identified several tanto, taken from Li Fei-nbu, she guessed, a couple of tonfa, 2 katana, and a kuzurigama before her knowledge of blades ran out. Several scrolls also hung from the cavern wall, and the girl wondered briefly at the army that could be prepared with the supplies they were currently surrounded by. Kakuzu's interest had been immediately drawn to a point halfway between where his two pupils were standing. "I presume that you are the third student Setsu mentioned," he intoned. At these words, Naruto and Fu both turned their heads in the direction Kakuzu's voice seemed to be directed. A boy sat on a crate, his right arm hung loosely over his bent knee. He had short, cobalt blue hair that was styled up in a spiky mohawk and skin a shade darker than pale. The boy jumped off the crate, revealing himself to be slightly taller than Naruto and possessing stormy gray eyes. He was garbed in a black cloak with red trim, a duplicate of the Akatsuki cloaks without any red clouds, and a gray armor piece which was wrapped around his torso. "My name is Haro," he said by way of explanation. His voice was soft, but the way his eyes flicked from person to person showed Kakuzu that he was more analytical than shy. Haro bowed slightly and added, "You must be Kakuzu. I have been informed that I am to follow your instructions." Kakuzu smirked beneath his mask. "Ah, a child I would have no problem teaching. He recognizes power and is respectful." Naruto scowled, "and he does not wear a garish uniform." Fu placed her hands on her hips and huffed indignantly. "Tell me, boy, what are your abilities?" Haro's eyes flickered from Naruto to Fu, as if unsure whether to divulge information in front of them. An intelligent genin, Kakuzu noted with satisfaction, he watches his surroundings and plans his moves accordingly. "It seems that this leader I hear so much about has some worthwhile minions under his command." "Speak," he commanded. "These will be your teammates, and understanding each other's skills is imperative for your cohesiveness as a unit." Not that Kakuzu really cared about teamwork, but that had been important back when he still worked for Takigakure, and would likely prove to be so once again during the Chunin exams. "I'm a sniper," Haro responded. Naruto's scowl gained a touch of confusion as one of Fu's eyebrows rose. Kakuzu's hard stare prompted the boy to elaborate. "I'm a mainly long-distance ninjutsu user proficient with right-hand techniques. Using the constant rain present in Amigekure, I'm able to pinpoint targets from far away and take them out." "Your leader must be an intelligent man, to use someone with your abilities in such a resourceful fashion," Kakuzu observed. "Pain-sama is a man worthy of respect," replied Haro devoutly. "He will save our country by eliminating Hanzo and his group of terrorists." The outburst was the first sign that Haro actually cared about something. "Interesting," mused the bounty hunter. "It seems his loyalty to Pain, whom I can only presume is this illustrious leader, is a pressure point for him. We shall have to be careful of that. However, it also means that he will be completely devoted to this mission so as to please his lord." "Excellent. Brat girl, speak." Fu stepped forward first. "I'm Fu, and I specialize in close to mid-range combat. My ninjutsu abilities lie in Dotan and Futan, as well as Jintan, a combination of the two." A moment passed before Naruto stepped forward, unwilling to test Kakuzu's temper. "My name's Naruto, and I'm mostly a mid-range ninjutsu specialist with Futan and Suiton attacks. I've also got some kenjutsu training for close combat." If Kakuzu were a more expressive person, he probably would have exhibited a sense of pride in the fact that both his students had explained their abilities to a complete stranger without giving away any pertinent information, their Jinchuriki status or Naruto's kenjutsu, for instance. However, as he was not that type of man, he quickly shoved that thought to the back of his mind before ordering Haro to tell them what he knew of the mission. "Not much," offered the cobalt-haired boy with a shrug. "I was just told to wait here by the plant guy until someone came." "Oh, the plant guy did say that we were to attend the Chunin exams as Amigekyo shinobi," he added. That announcement caused Kakuzu to frown. While he knew that they couldn't waltz into Konoha as they were, the idea that they would have to disguise themselves as Rain Ninja was not one he was looking forward to. Of course, his first student had already taken matters into his own hands. "Here," said Naruto, picking genin attire from the Amigekure section of clothes, "this looks like everything we'll need." He walked over to Haro and deposited a bunch of clothes into his arms, throwing another set at Fu. Kakuzu eyed the blonde critically as he was given his own, rather large, bundle of ninja gear. "I guess that you have to wear this stuff too, huh, Kakuzu?" he mentioned. "Keep to your corners, or else," threatened the older ninja. He glared at Naruto, about to protest that there were no corners in the round cavern, until the blonde turned around. It wasn't a matter of being self-conscious, but if he had to don such a ridiculous outfit, he would do it without more comments about his strange body. The reveal of the mouth stitches during his battle with his students was plenty enough for now. 10 minutes later, all four were dressed in standard Ainin attire. Naruto and Hero wore an elbow-length gray shirt over a blue shirt, with a pale green scarf wrapped loosely around their necks. Dark blue pants with 4 light blue stripes along the sides ended in black ninja shoes. Each boy had a tan kunai pouch attached at the back of their pants, and their arms were wrapped from elbow to wrist in bandages. Lastly, both had donned the Hideate of Amigakure, a metal plate with 4 vertical lines sewn upon blue cloth. Hero wore his tilted and just off-center of his forehead, and muttered quietly about how he missed his own, slashed-through mark, while Naruto had been forced by Kakuzu to wear a full dark blue head covering. How many people in Konoha have bright yellow hair? Demanded the bounty hunter when Naruto whined, and would have to place a minor henjan to cover his whisker-like markings upon reaching Konoha. Fu was dressed in much the same fashion, wearing a red undershirt instead of blue and skin-tight pants that ended just above her knee. Her Hideate was tied around her right bicep, and the red cylindrical object she always carried remained in place on her back. It took a strong amount of self-restraint for Naruto not to comment on Kakuzu's current condition, considering the bounty hunter was never seen without his typical cloak, head covering, and mask. The former Takinin had been forced to wear a long-sleeved black shirt and pants, with Ames sea green, Jonin flak jacket over that. A dark blue material, a rain cloak, Naruto surmised, was draped over his shoulders and fell to his mid-forearm, the cloth open in the front for mobility. Like the genin, Kakuzu had wrapped bandages around the rest of his forearms down to the wrists, and kept a brown kunai pouch attached to his pants at the back. In order to keep himself fully covered, he had also donned a full head covering with the Hidden Rain Village affiliation on it, as well as a complex-looking rebreather to hide the remainder of his facial features. "Get your supplies," he ordered gruffly, clearly unhappy with the way things were going. Naruto and Hero approached the kunai and shuriken crates, quickly loading their pouches with the weapons. Fu walked over to the wall of weapons and pulled several umbrellas from their perch, checking to make sure they were fully equipped with saban. She placed those in the red case on her back, the handles up, and then filled her own weapons pouch with extra saban. As Hero went to examine the weapons, she turned and flashed Kakuzu a victorious grin. "Told you I'd find a use for this thing." "Congratulations," he deadpanned, "it only took you a year to do so. Bring whatever food from here that you can carry. I refuse to waste any money on pampering you brats while we are within Konoha." That's not necessary," Kakuzu-san interrupted Hero, walking toward him while strapping a pair of katana, each with 2 smaller, oppositely curved metal pieces, approximately 2 inches in length, one near the base, the second close to the tip, to his back. "Pain-sama has provided me with the funds we'll need in order to survive behind enemy lines." "Very well," conceded Kakuzu after a moment. "Come, let us depart." He turned around and led the way out of the hideout, Naruto, Fu, and Hero following not far behind. The trip to the center of the Land of Fire, where the hidden leaf was located, was far more active than Fu would have expected. Hero, who had no previous biases about anyone in the group, remained noticeably silent, observing his new teammates with growing curiosity. However, the thrill of the Chunin exams had apparently instilled an even greater sense of mischief within Naruto than she had thought possible. "So we get to call you Kakuzu-sensei now, right?" Naruto asked eagerly. He was a bit too enthusiastic with his questioning, in Fu's opinion. Kakuzu already hated honorifics tacked upon his name, and being reminded of it, if the last 3 times were any indication, did not improve his increasingly sour mood. Wearing clothes he was uncomfortable with, and being sent on a mission that he was not in control of seemed to shorten Kakuzu's already dangerously short temper. She noticed Hero watching the scene play out from the corner of his eye. "No," Kakuzu answered in a clipped tone. Come on." Naruto continued to egg, "we need it to solidify our team disguise." "No." Hero cleared his throat. "Actually, it would be practical to refer to you as our sensei, in order to not appear suspicious to any Konohanin." Kakuzu remained silent for a long moment, appearing to fight the urge to do something detrimental to the mission, like killing Hero or Naruto. Only when we reached the village, he finally growled. They settled down that night in a large clearing Kakuzu estimated to be 20 miles away from the village. The bounty hunter told his team that they would arrive sometime in the afternoon the next day. Hero and Fu merely nodded, but Naruto chirped, "Okay, Kakuzu-sensei." Fu thought that, in the dead silence of the clearing, she could almost hear the final snap of Kakuzu's frayed, hair-thin temper. Kakuzu's arm detached, quicker than lightning, and grabbed a surprised Naruto around the neck. The blonde's arms flailed wildly as Kakuzu dragged him closer. Black threads erupted from beneath the bandages over his wrist and wrapped themselves around Naruto's arms, binding them to his body. Haro took a step forward and began to withdraw his swords, but Fu placed a forceful hand on his shoulder and shook her head. Naruto needed to learn this lesson. The two watched as Kakuzu brought Naruto right up to his face, the rebreather he was forced to wear the only thing separating the two. Listen well, brat, Kakuzu hissed, his muffled voice coming out even lower and more dangerous than anyone present expected. I have tolerated your foolishness far longer than I should have, and this childish wordplay and immaturity will cease immediately. You should be grateful for the fact that we have embarked on a dangerous mission that we know next to nothing about, where you get all the benefits and I am forced to engage in a battle I might not be completely prepared for. He lowered his voice further, so Haro and Fu could no longer hear him. I never had intention of taking a pupil until I was confronted by you. Now, after steeping years of time and money into your tutoring, I expect you to act like the shinobi you have been raised to be. You are the carrier of Jiangu, a technique few alive have even heard of. You possess the chakra capacity and abilities of a powerful shinobi, and I have bestowed upon you the resources necessary to survive and thrive within this hell of a world. Must I resort to more drastic measures in order to drill home this lesson? Naruto had stopped struggling once Kakuzu's diatribe had begun, and now he stared at the tall ninja with wide, blue eyes. You trained me? He asked reflexively, even as his mind traced the truth in his teacher's words. Shame began to flood his body, causing him to slump forward in defeat. He's right, Kakuzu was the first person to ever treat me like I was a person rather than a piece of dirt. I owe him a lot. The least I can do is show him some respect. The best taught lessons come from personal investment without outside influence, Kakuzu told him. When he noticed that Naruto seemed to understand his point, the black tendrils around his pupil loosened. I presume that you have learned your lesson? The blonde nodded slightly. Good. Now sufficiently calm, Kakuzu started to place the boy down, but then seemed to think better of it. He pitched his arm back and then threw Naruto forward, releasing the blonde so he impacted headfirst into a tree 20 feet away. Ah, Kakuzu-san, that doesn't seem like the way to treat your student. Kakuzu scowled. Zetsu, I thought you had errands to run. This one ended up being the most prudent, replied Zetsu, stepping out from the tree and right over Naruto. You almost hit me with him, he whined. My apologies, Kakuzu deadpanned. It appears that I will have to work on my aim in the future. Why are you here? We had to finalize plans for the passes which will allow you entry into the Konoha, the plant man said, handing Kakuzu 4 slips of paper. We had some help acquiring those, he admitted. Naruto, pulling himself to his feet, glanced into the copse of trees behind him and caught sight of a blood-red pair of eyes before they melded into the darkness. Itachi, thought Naruto, turning his attention back to the conversation. Whatever needed to be said had apparently been said though, for Zetsu immediately disappeared into the ground. Naruto thought he might have heard the plant man's lighter side laughing, at what, he didn't know, but brushed it off as a trick of his imagination. Your passes, Kakuzu said, handing them each one of the slips of paper. On it was their respective headshot, along with their name, village affiliation, and the fact that they had permission to enter the Hidden Leaf for participation in the Chunin exams. Naruto looked at the name on his paper and frowned. Why is my name Shinobu? His question prompted Fu into examining her own pass. The girl also frowned before looking over Haro's shoulder. The frown grew deeper. My name's Kazu. Why does Haro get to keep his name? Kakuzu pinched the spot between his eyebrows with his thumb and forefinger, massaging the growing headache and rage that he was still nursing from his tantrum with Naruto. It is possible that either of you might be recognized by name, or even appearance, disguises aside, during our stay in Konohagakure. I can only conclude that it was decided you would be forced to use aliases, just in case someone from your former villages recognize you. Haro is an unknown entity, and thus could keep his own name because there is no potential danger to the mission. My name has also been altered. He held up his own pass so they could see that he had been registered as Aizo. Underneath that, he was identified as a Jonin instructor. I am no more pleased about it than you are, however, we must play the roles we are assigned for now. He sighed, the breath coming out frustrated. Upon our arrival in Konoha, we shall use the names we have been given. You will refer to me as Aizo-sensei. The bounty hunter almost spat the name, as if it were a curse. When he turned away and stalked into the nearby foliage muttering expletives, the 3 teammates took that as the cue that they were to go to sleep. The quartet was up and walking just after dawn the following day. Not long after noon, they arrived at the large, welcoming gates of the Hidden Leaf village. The Chunin guards at the gate asked them for their passports, checked the papers, and waved them through. Kakuzu muttered something about lax security when they were out of earshot, and both Naruto and Fu forced themselves to hide their grins. The remainder of the day was slow. Kakuzu followed a group of grass shinobi to the hotel that was designated for all incoming foreign ninja. As they walked through the city, the 3 children tried not to gape in awe at the sights. their heads turning every which way to better see the village. Kakuzu went directly to his room upon reaching the hotel, closing and locking the door behind him. His 3 students collapsed upon their own beds, stripping off some of their more cumbersome clothing. The bounty hunter had kept them moving at a brisk pace all morning with almost no rest or food. Despite their training and stamina, the foreign clothes and the land of fire's humidity made for uncomfortable traveling conditions. Tired, and unwilling to press their luck in dealing with Kakuzu, the 3 relaxed around their room until evening and then went to bed. When Naruto awoke the next day, it was to sunlight streaming in through a small slit in the window curtains, and not the standard kick from his teacher. He yawned loudly, opening bleary eyes to watch Fu step out of the bathroom in her rain ninja outfit. Haru's bed was empty, and the connecting door to Kakuzu's room was open, presenting its empty